in a world. Oh, it worked. What up, though, fam? All right. Interesting show. Shout out to Jack Jazz Jacket member for 3 months. Much love, brother. And Retro Ricer Gaming. With it, some more bread for the gravy. Gotta go BJJ, so I'll have to watch the stream later. Careful you're not charged with murder after that debate with Ozian. Yeah, that was pretty brutal in many ways. All right. Thank you guys for kicking it. Relatively speaking, episode 2. We're going to get right into it. Interesting show for you tonight. All right, let's just go ahead and pop over here. Let me see real fast if the chat overlay is working. It is not. So let me add that really fast. I got you. Some people like it. Some people don't like it. All right. There it is. All right, cool. Let's go ahead and go full screen and check out the presentation. I should have changed this. This is not what I meant for it to say, but doesn't matter. All right, it's about my boy, Ernst Mach, who explained that motion around a central body, such as the Earth, will result in a net force acting upon said central body. Should have said upon. So very interesting here. I'm going to go ahead and pop over here just in case some people have never heard of this. But Ernst Mach proposed this idea saying that it was actually a physical necessity that if you were to have a stationary Earth with the universe moving around it, then you would have the transfer of forces. Okay, primarily centrifugal and Coriolis forces. And of course, we know that Coriolis is a real force. It's a real thing. Just not the way the current model claims it. We'll get more into that. But as to do the pendulums really precess, what could cause it, what could cause the ring laser gyro precession to match the sidereal rotation. The idea that this entire universe, quote unquote, the cosmos is a better word. Shout out to Blaze for pointing that out. Meaning order. This cosmos moves around the Earth, and that's going to transfer forces onto the Earth as it sits there stationary. Okay, now let's just get into it, just in case people didn't know what that was. Ernst Mach, the science of mechanics. If you go to my Telegram, t.me/WitsitStreams, I dropped a whole bunch of PDFs in there from this presentation. All right. So here is Wikipedia. It is seen that the Coriolis acceleration not only cancels the centrifugal acceleration out, but together they provide a net centripetal, radially inward component of acceleration that is directed toward the center of rotation. This is very important. Coriolis acceleration will overcome centrifugal force twice as strong, in fact, thus result in a net centripetal force inward. Now, of course, centrifugal or centrifugal will be moving outward, centripetal moving inward. Very simple. Spin the ball, there's a force exerted outward because of the ball, and then a force exerted inward would be centripetal or centripetal. Okay. So what's interesting is if you have the Coriolis acceleration and a centrifugal acceleration, together they provide a net centripetal, radially inward component of acceleration that is directed toward the center of rotation. Okay, that will be important. Meaning, of course, if you have both of them, the net will be inward. Okay, now here is Andre Assis. He wrote Relational Mechanics in 1999. Revered physicist and mathematician. Let's check out what he had to say. So he explained the centrifugal and Coriolis forces are not due to interactions with the distant universe. However, in general relativity, we must include F not only the local forces like the Earth's gravity acting on the test body, but also the real gravitational force exerted by the spinning distant universe acting on the test body. We pop down a little bit here. You see, these two numerical calculations show that general relativity does not yield the measured values of these quantities in the Earth's frame of reference. This analysis shows clearly that in general relativity, kinematically equivalent situations are not dynamically equivalent. Now, this is a bit of a higher level, but I'm going to really try to keep it where everyone's understanding. I got you. I totally forgot the setup here, but anyway. So, oh, maybe it's this one. It's not terrible. Okay. So, what he's explaining is that, forget it. I'm going to pop back over here. All right. What he's explaining is that he shows quantitatively that if you use Newtonian mechanics and you account for, now this is all in the context of a pendulum. He does the math and shows you that, in fact, relativity doesn't even match the predicted or the, experimentally validated and observed results of, say, the pendulum's precession. Relativity doesn't work mathematically. And he shows the mathematical difference between the Newtonian application and the relativistic one, which is very interesting. They're different, and only one of them can even, in theory, work. Now, that right there is a very serious problem for heliocentrism, as it requires relativity. Requires it. Cannot have Newtonian mechanics. Requires relativity. Okay, so we're just going to keep reading what he's got to say here. Again, the PDF's in my Telegram. All right, so again, these two, we can pop up a little further just so you can see exactly what he's saying. The plane of oscillation of Foucault's pendulum, on the other hand, will precess at a rate given by said equation relative to latitude. We'll get into that later. The factor 1/3 was due to 5 times 1/15 as in equation 7.2. The analogous to Coriolis force is 5 times larger than the analogous to the centrifugal one. 5 times larger. However, what is observed experimentally is a precession given by Newtonian mechanics. So, relativity has a different mathematical prediction than Newtonian gravity when it comes to the idea of the precession on a pendulum. And of course, relativity says they're interchangeable. This analysis shows clearly that in general relativity, kinematically equivalent equations are not dynamically equivalent. Of course, kinematics being geometric. Like when they first came up with the idea of the universe, that was kinematic. When they're like, oh, I think I'm a special boy. Let's say the sun's in the center. They were drawing a bunch of circles telling you what they thought was going on kinematically or geometrically. They were not presenting, I think that this force is acting on this from this body, nothing like that. It was just, where could they be moving in relation to each other? It's not until you fast forward all the way up to Newton, right, where you get the introduction of a dynamic force, meaning a body interacting with another one via force, dynamical relationship. Okay, so important to understand what he's saying here. He's saying that according to relativity, clearly in this quantitative analysis, the math shows that if there is a system that is kinematically identical, it is not dynamically identical. This is important because this is a misnomer within relativity. I promise that I know some of you guys are kind of like, wait, what is he talking about? Trust me, you're going to get it before it's all over. Brother, so glad I caught you. I don't get notifications here. Welcome to the club. All right. So here we go. And here is all the math. Like I said, I'm not going to sit here and go through all of the math in the whole PDF, but it's in my Telegram. Here we have defined this equation. To let this Coriolis term become similar to Lorenz's magnetic force, it might be called the gravitational magnetic field generated by the rotation of the set of distant galaxies. Wow. Wow. What page in the book is that? I'm pretty sure it's in the, I dropped the page in Telegram, but we're going to be looking at all these PDFs after the PowerPoint. All right, this is pretty interesting. So again, this is in the context of saying, okay, if the universe, quote unquote, the cosmos is moving around a stationary Earth, or if the Earth is spinning, revolving, flying through a, basically, I don't want to get into that part of what the universe is, so flying through the universe, then you have basically an equivalence principle here, all right? It can go one way or the other. And we're specifically talking about alleged rotation. Now, if you don't know, of course, let me come back over here again. So I want to make sure everyone's fully understanding it. So you have what's called Michelson-Morley, right? 1887, shot perpendicular light rays, the one going against the assumed orbit of the Earth around the sun, which was assumed to be 30 kilometers a second, roughly 20 miles a second. As that perpendicular light ray going against the motion, as opposed to the one going with the motion, should have actually been received later than the one going with the motion. Very simple, right? If you have these two light beams going different ways, and then they recombine in the middle, and then both come back down to the same receiver, the one that's going with the motion of the Earth should be faster than the one going against the motion, because the Earth's moving away from it, right? Okay, anyway, so of course it didn't show that. Now you fast forward to Michelson-Gell-Pearson, which I believe was 1935. Don't quote me on that. 1935, they used the same principles. They used interferometry, same exact principles, built upon, of course, a framework of ether, and it did match the sidereal rotation of 15 degrees per hour. Of course, the rate in which we see the sky rotate above us. So it did match that, which is interesting. So how do they coincide? So long story short, we have this measurable effect of sidereal rotation, whether that be ring laser gyros, whether that be a pendulum. Now, we'll get into some of the specifics about the pendulum. There's some shoddy stuff about that, but it doesn't matter. The ring laser gyro is a very interesting situation. Okay, so he is examining the idea of the Machian principle, and this is, again, his 1999, well-respected physicist and mathematician. Explaining to you that if you actually do the math, you find out very quickly that not only does this model necessitate that you agree that it could happen, right? That it's physically viable. General relativity doesn't even work, which is very interesting. And so once you begin to entertain the idea that, wow, okay, say everything is moving around the Earth in the center, in order to explain the physics, you have a perfectly equivalent analogy that you can use, and that is magnetism, which is pretty interesting. What a coincidence. Now, we know it looks like if there's a bunch of stuff moving around us, it probably is electromagnetic, seeing as how everything is. So this is getting really interesting real quick. Okay. Sorry, wrong screen. So you're going to get a lot of that fake little satellite there. Okay, so again, to let this Coriolis term become similar to Lorenz's magnetic force, it might be called the gravitational magnetic field generated by the rotation of the set of distant galaxies. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. Let us consider that the motion is initially in the XZ plane. It is then easy to see that a gravitational magnetic field in the Y direction will only change the tension in the string in order to keep its constant length, but will not change the plane of oscillation. A gravitational magnetic field in the X direction will not change in the plane of oscillation as well. The X component of the velocity, he goes on to say that it will, in fact, the gravitational magnetic field will, in fact, change it in the Y direction. We'll cover that when we look at the PDFs. Important part here I want you to understand, as I gave you the context here, and he's explaining with all of the math, that whenever you actually let the Coriolis term become similar to Lorenz's magnetic force, it might be called a gravitational magnetic field generated by the rotation of the set of distant galaxies, and then it fully explains all components of what they claim they detect with sidereal rotation with a stationary Earth. Now, you're going to find out in just a second, it's actually physically viable as opposed to the alternative, which is the current model. All right, in relational mechanics, we can interpret this rotation as an analog of the magnetic Lorentz force law. In this case, the spinning set of distant galaxies generates a gravitational magnetic field, which exerts a force on moving masses. The flattened figure of the Earth, or Foucault's pendulum, can no longer be utilized as proofs of the Earth's real rotation. In relational mechanics, both facts can be equally explained with the frame of distant galaxies at rest, exerting a gravitational force on bodies at the Earth's surface while the Earth rotates relative to this frame, or with the Earth at rest while the distant galaxies rotate around it, exerting a gravitational force on bodies at the Earth's surface. Both explanations are equally correct and yield the same effects, and only when using Newtonian, Einsteinian doesn't even work. It doesn't even work. It then becomes a matter of convenience or of convention to choose the Earth, the distant galaxies, or any other body or frame of reference to be considered at rest. Don't take the bait from the weirdo in the chat. He's getting triggered that he doesn't know this, and it's going to get worse. So just ignore him. All right. So I hope everyone's following me here. He does the math. He shows that relativity actually can't even explain this Coriolis effect, this precession with the pendulum based on the sidereal rotation. Only Newtonian mechanics can give you a result that actually matches the experimental observations, as he would put it. And that when you then accept this, acknowledge it, and then apply Mach's principle quantitatively and mathematically using real physics of a magnetic force, then you find out that they yield the same results, they're equally correct, and that no longer can Foucault's pendulum be considered or utilized as proof of the Earth's real rotation. Uh-oh. Moving on. Now we have Dr. Luka Popov. Probably saying that wrong. Newtonian Machian analysis of the Neo-Tychonian model of planetary motions, European Journal of Physics, 2013. I dropped this in the Telegram as well. We'll pull it up in just a second. Here's the conclusion of the paper. The analysis of planetary motions has been performed in the Newtonian framework with the assumption of Mach's principle. The kinematical equivalence of the heliocentric and the geocentric systems is shown to be consequent. Now, specifically, the Copernican and the Neo-Tychonian, meaning a newer, updated version of the Tychonic system. That's Tycho Brahe, the tutor of Kepler. The kinematical equivalence of the Copernican or heliocentric and the Neo-Tychonic, or I like to say Neo-Tychonic, geocentric systems is shown to be a consequence of the presence of pseudo-potential in the geocentric system, which according to Mach must be regarded as the real potential originating from the fact of the simultaneous acceleration of the universe, meaning if you have the universe moving, the cosmos moving around the Earth. This analysis can be performed on any other celestial body observed from the Earth, since the Sun and Moon, or the Sun and Mars, are chosen arbitrarily, and there is nothing special about Mars. One can expect to obtain the same general conclusion. There is another interesting remark that follows from this analysis. If one could put the whole universe in accelerated motion around the Earth, the pseudo-potential corresponding to pseudo-force will immediately be generated. That same pseudo-potential then causes the universe to stay in that very state of motion without any need for exterior forces acting upon it. Meaning, what he's saying is, effectively, in other words, that it would move perpetually. It would go forever. It would need no requirement of additional forces if there was, in fact, an accelerating motion of the cosmos around the Earth. Okay. Now here we have Steven Weinberg, and to explain the world, very famous physicist. He says here, if we were to adopt a frame of reference like Tycho's in which the Earth is at rest, then the distant galaxies would seem to be executing circular turns once a year. Wow, let me just pause it real fast here. If we were to adopt a frame of reference like Tycho's in which the Earth is at rest, then the distant galaxies would seem to be executing circular turns once a year. Wait a minute. There's no way. That doesn't make any sense. The distant galaxies are completing one turn a year? No way. No way. Geocentrism could never work. That would mean that the galaxies are turning once a year in accordance with the entire cycle that completes every year. Wow. No, it's much more logical that it's chaotic and random and just looks that way. That's the thing most people don't realize. If you take the Earth as a central position, it means that the galaxies just complete a rotation, a circular motion once a year. You go check out my stream Geocentrism if you're unaware of any of this subject. I don't want to digress too much. All right. If we were to adopt a frame of reference like Tycho's in which the Earth is at rest, then the distant galaxies would seem to be executing circular turns once a year. And in general relativity, this enormous motion would create forces akin to gravitation. In general relativity, if you believe in the current heliocentric model, you must believe in general relativity. And in general relativity, this is a necessity. Right? Like, if you believe in that, this is what is required to believe in it. Okay? Is that in general relativity, this enormous motion, what motion? These distant galaxies executing circular turns once a year, where the Earth is at rest. This enormous motion, according to general relativity, would create forces akin to gravitation, which would act on the sun and planets and give them the motions of the Tychonic theory, which is, of course, the Earth being stationary and everything moving around it. Newton seems to have had a hint of this in an unpublished Proposition 43 that did not make it to the Principia, is how I say it. Principica. I don't know how to say it. Newton acknowledged that Tycho's theory could be true if some other force besides ordinary gravitation acted on the sun and planets. Now, this is interesting. Why have you never heard of any of this? I thought we knew for a fact the Earth was a tilted, wobbling, spinning sphere that revolves around a vacuum inside of a vacuum around the sun, while it then flies 500,000 miles per hour around the center of the galaxy. That then flies 1.3 million miles per hour through space. But everything seems like it's perfectly still. There's no way. I mean, Okay. Can you zoom out a bit? Oh, why is it cut off? Sorry, I didn't know it was like that. Let me fix it. In the world. It was just barely cut off though. All right, cool. Moving on. Now what's interesting about that is in an unpublished, wonder why it didn't make publication, Proposition 43. It didn't make it into the final copy? That's interesting. Newton acknowledged that Tycho's theory could be true. I thought Newton's the one that proved for sure with dynamical forces that the Earth had to be going around the sun. Okay, here is Newton's Principia. I'm sure that's wrong. No, there's not a C. I'm just going to say Principia. Who cares? Proposition 43, Theorem 22, original handwritten page. So this is a real thing. Here it is. Here's the actual handwritten page. And obviously that's not legible, so here's what it says. In order for the Earth to be at rest in the center of the system of the sun, planets, and comets, there is required both universal gravity and another force in addition that acts on all bodies equally according to the quantity of matter in each of them and is equal and opposite to the accelerative gravity with which the Earth tends to the sun, and thus the celestial bodies can move around the Earth at rest, as in the Tychonic system. Again, physicist Isaac Newton. I wonder why this was not ever told to you. Why does this keep being cut off? It's super lame. I mean, let the normal person that fights this so hard tell you. I mean, he slam dunked heliocentrism, right? What happened to that? I thought he just, windmilled heliocentrism. Because it certainly doesn't appear that way. So he says, in fact, the Earth can be at rest. And he couldn't think of a way to balance this all out, and we're going to get into that in just a second. So he's saying, let's just to make sure everyone fully follows it. In order for the Earth to be at rest in the center of the system of the sun, planets, and comets, there is required both universal gravity and another force in addition. Okay, remember that. And that acts on all bodies equally according to the quantity of matter in each of them, and is equal and opposite to the accelerative gravity with which the Earth tends to the sun. All right. Here is Christian Mahler, The Theory of Relativity. Let's see what he had to say. However, it seems to be rather difficult beforehand to acknowledge the accelerated systems of reference as equivalent to the systems of inertia as regards the description of natural phenomena. When in the following chapters we speak of an accelerated system, simply we always have in mind a system accelerated relative to the systems of inertia or to the fixed stars. For example, if we consider a purely mechanical system consisting of a number of material particles acted upon by given forces, and with velocity small compared with the velocity of light relative to a system of inertia, Newton's fundamental equations of mechanics may be applied with good approximation in the description of this system. On the other hand, if we wish to describe the system in an accelerated system of reference, we must introduce, as is well known, so-called fictitious forces, centrifugal forces, Coriolis forces, etc., which have no connection whatever with the physical properties of the mechanical system itself. In fact, they depend exclusively on the acceleration of the system of reference introduced relative to the systems of inertia. Basically, we must pretend that we had to plug these in, but treat them as if they're fictitious, and it's all relative to reference frame. They're not actual, hence I'm calling them so-called fictitious forces, and that they don't have any connection whatsoever with the physical properties of the mechanical system itself. Okay. It was just for this reason that Newton introduced the concept of absolute space, which should represent the system of reference where the laws of nature assume the simplest and most natural form. Key here I want you to pay attention to is Newton introduced the concept of absolute space. Okay? Let me get a drink. Trust me, I got you. If you're kind of lost right now, I got you. Just try to pay attention. Trust me. The key here, Newton introduced the concept of absolute space, which should represent the system of reference where the laws of nature assume the simplest and most natural form. Okay, absolute space. That means it's fixed. Space is fixed. It's absolute, right? And everything's moving within it. All right, interesting. However, as mentioned at the beginning of Chapter 2, the notion of absolute space lost its physical meaning as soon as the special principle of relativity was generally accepted. Wait, what? So let's just come over here. Now, for all these people, I keep trying to tell people for a long time now, as many of us probably have, Newtonian and Einsteinian physics are fundamentally a contradiction. You cannot say, oh, well, I can make the math turn in, like, equal out, and I can get the same solution. They're fundamentally different. And in fact, they actually have different mathematical outputs relative to specific cases. They're fundamentally different, though. I said this in Relatively Speaking 1. I had someone in the chat talking about how I made it up or whatever. It's just obvious, right? Newton had an absolute space. Space was absolute. It was fixed. Everything moved through it. Okay. And he had to do this. So I don't want to give that away. But so what he points out here, right, just like I explained last week, is that this idea of absolute space dispenses with the acceptance of relativity. There is no absolute space. Now, you remember last week I told you, like, look, we got this pin, gonna drop it. According to Newton, the pin goes down. It's gonna continue to go down in a straight line until another force acts upon it. Einstein says, well, it free falls, but actually, it just looks like it's going straight and free fall in a geodesic curve with no force acting on it, right? And Newton said there's a fixed background of space. Einstein said there's no fixed background of space. Now, we covered that last week. Okay, moving on. However, as mentioned in the beginning of chapter 2, the notion of an absolute space lost its physical meaning as soon as the special principle of relativity was generally accepted. For as a consequence of this principle, it became impossible by any experiment to decide which system of inertia had to be regarded as the absolute system. Therefore, Einstein advocated a new interpretation of the fictitious forces in accelerated systems of reference instead of regarding them as an expression of a difference in principle between the fundamental equations and uniformly moving and accelerated systems. He considered both kinds of systems of reference to be completely equivalent as regards the form of the fundamental equations, and the fictitious forces were treated as real forces on the same footing as any other force of nature. I know that was a lot. In other words, Newton said, okay, you have a fixed background of space, and then we're going to introduce these other forces such as centrifugal and Coriolis forces, but they're just fictitious. And we have a fixed background of space. Einstein throws the fixed background of space out and then is forced to say they are real forces, just as real as any other force of nature. These are fundamentally different. When you talk to apologists on the internet nowadays, what they're going to tell you... Yeah, it says short intermission because it's just whatever. I have to cover it up with something. So, the reason that this is important is because these are fundamentally different. You talk to apologists on the internet nowadays, right? And they try to say, I guess I come over here if that's bothering you. They try to say that they're the same thing. And they push the idea of fictitious forces, right? Maybe I'll just do this. And in reality, they're fundamentally different. They're not the same. Okay? Einstein, they push fictitious forces. Einstein says, no. They have to be real forces. In order for my theory to be able to work, we have to treat them as real forces, just as real as any other force that exists. They're real. Newton said they were fictitious. It's because he had to, and we'll get into that in just a second. He had to. But Einstein had to move away from the fixed background of space. Why? Because of relativity. Okay? Because of relativity. And like, I'll leave the live chat replay will be up, and I'll open up the phone lines, but people like this won't actually come in. They would obviously get dunked on, right? But anyway, this dude that's obsessed with my channel here. He says both Newton's universal gravitation and Einstein's field equations use GFFS, right? This is all that they can say. They can't acknowledge, they don't understand it, but it's okay. We're just going to talk about what's real. See, we're not just talking about similarity in the math. Of course, they're trying to explain the same general phenomena as in the dynamical relationship that causes orbit and motion. Okay, so of course they have a commonality, but they are fundamentally different. They being like the weirdos that just, who cares what they think? I'm telling you what's really going on. Okay, it's important to understand this. The whole cosmos moving around the Earth is conceded as valid by relativity, and it's fundamentally different than Newtonian mechanics. Fundamentally different, grossly different, drastically different. Like, it changed everything. They aren't the same at all. Right. Again, Einstein, this object's falling down. It's actually can go in a curved path while going straight down. In one reference frame, it's actually curving, and the other one called a geodesic, where it's free falling and changing angular direction with no force acting upon it. Never been replicated, never been demonstrated, never even been shown in any form of experimental physics ever. It never will be. It's actually anomalous physics. You can't have an object free falling, changing angular direction perpetually with no force acting upon it. That's modern cosmology. That's the modern model of heliocentrism, relativity, geodesic paths. They say that we're going around the sun, but even though we're changing direction, we're not changing direction. You can treat it like translational motion, meaning linear. Okay? Now, Newton, that's what Einstein says. Again, Einstein. Objects can go straight down in one reference frame, but in reality, even though it looks like it's going straight down in free fall, it's free falling, but actually curving a geodesic through curved space-time, and it can curve with no forces acting upon it. Newtonian mechanics. Objects will continue to free fall straight down unless another force comes and acts upon it to change its direction. Einstein, or Newton, fixed background of space, an absolute space, absolute fixed background of space. Now, these are top-level physicists from within the heliocentric paradigm. This is just the facts. This is using Newton and Einstein in modern physics. This is the entire paradigm. This is what it really is. The reason for this channel or for this show is to show you what's actually the decision to make, and then you can make your own decision. But the vast majority of people have no idea. They have no idea. Like this guy right here, right? Okay. So, Newton, fixed background of space, absolute fixed background of space. Einstein, no fixed background. Now, Newton said, notice that he needed something else for his dynamic relationship to work, the idea of gravitation. Now, for one, it had to be instant. And we'll kind of touch on that a little bit at the end of this, but that'll be next week. I think I'm going to do that. I'm just going to take the speed of light within relativity and just kind of, bury it. So we'll body bag the instantaneity of relativity, the speed of light and all that probably next week. But the point here is that you have the dynamical forces, right, that need to be explained within Newtonian mechanics. And he's like, okay, well, in order to actually be able to explain this, we have to add in stuff like to even make the math work. To even make the math work, he had to add in a Coriolis force, a centrifugal force, centrifugal, but they couldn't be actual because he had no physical mechanism for the force, right? And it couldn't fit in anywhere physically with a physical mechanism. So he had to call them fictitious, meaning we'll just be able to take the math and the assumed effect, but I can't integrate it into my dynamical theory to actually explain how it would all work physically. I can't explain any physical mechanism. Invoking any actual physical mechanism of these effects I need for my math to work would actually refute my theory. We call them fictitious. Therefore, what we do is we use an absolute space. It's absolute, it's unmoving, it's unchanging, it's inertial, it's absolute, it's fixed. Everything's moving through it. It is what everything is in reference to, and therefore he was able to integrate into his math fictitious forces. Now, you'll hear people running around talking about fictitious forces today, which is very interesting. Because basically what happens is, as they go through modern physics, they're like, speed of light works here, special relativity. Speed of light doesn't work here, general relativity. GR doesn't work here, Newtonian mechanics. Newtonian mechanics doesn't work here, general relativity. Neither Newtonian or general relativity work here, quantum. None of them work on the cosmological scale, dark energy, dark matter, dark flow, quantum foam, blah, 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 blah. Okay? So quantum foam, of course, being the quantum scale. So it's important to understand that not to just listen to other people trying to gatekeep your internet. You have to go read these PDFs, look through them. I'll try to create like more brief summaries. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and move on. Okay. So, where we're right here, both kinds of systems of reference to be completely equivalent as regards to the form of fundamental equations, and the fictitious forces were treated as real forces on the same footing as any other force of nature. That is, in relativity, therefore contrary to Newtonian physics. The reason for the occurrence in accelerated systems of reference of such peculiar forces should, according to this new idea, be sought in the circumstance that the distant masses of the fixed stars are accelerated relative to these systems of reference. The fictitious forces are thus created as a kind of gravitational force, the acceleration of the distant masses causing a field of gravitation in the system of reference considered. What this is saying is that with everything moving around the Earth, there is a real force that would act on the rest frame of the Earth. And that to even entertain relativity, it is necessitated ideologically, physically, philosophically, conceptually, period. Theory of relativity dictates this be the case. It dictates this be the case, okay? So that's what it's saying. The fictitious forces are thus treated as a kind of gravitational force. The acceleration of the distant masses causing a field of gravitation in the system of the reference considered. Always important disclaimer here. What does it mean by as a gravitational force? It means objects being able to exert a force on each other in a dynamic relationship and cause them to move relative to one another. Now, just like magnetism would do, like magnetic levitation, quantum locking, like how magnets, you can have a vortexual effect within a magnet, how you can attain an orbit with magnetism, electromagnetism. Same thing. They hijack that same type of dynamical relationship, but they cannot use electromagnetism within their paradigm. They call it gravity, okay? The point here is, and again, this is actually comes from Einstein here. That's who he's actually referencing. The reason for this occurrence in accelerated systems of reference of such peculiar forces should, according to this new idea, this is almost a direct quote from Einstein right there, be sought in the circumstance that the distant masses of the fixed stars are accelerated relative to these systems of reference. This is basically a concession that you must, of course, acknowledge that if everything around, or everything in the cosmos is moving around a rest frame of the Earth, you would, in fact, have a real translation of force to the Earth. Relativity necessitates it. Heliocentrism necessitates relativity, meaning if you believe in the current heliocentric model of the globe tilted, wobbling, spinning, revolving around the sun, using what's called gravity, the theory of relativity, then you have to acknowledge that it's equally valid that the Earth could be at rest in the center of everything, and it's an equally valid coordinate system, as well as it's equally valid physically that it would in fact cause translation of force and give you effects on the Earth that can be classified as Coriolis. The difference is that it would be real and not fictitious. Okay. Now here's an explanation here. We have centripetal plus inertia equals angular momentum of Earth around the sun. Okay, you have this orange line here. Now, of course, let's start with the bottom lines here. Can you see my mouse? Yeah. Okay. Centripetal force here, right? Going one direction. You have centrifugal force going the other direction, right? This is the idea of us going around the sun, the Newtonian system. So the centripetal force going in towards the sun, right? Gravity supposedly pulling you in towards the sun. So you have the centripetal force by gravity pulling you in towards the sun, while you have the centrifugal effects of the Earth moving against the sun as it goes in that rotation. Okay. The inertia, the Earth's mass seeks to move in a straight line at the velocity of the momentum, so that P equals mv. So you have the Earth longing to go this way as it's being pulled in to go around the sun. So centripetal plus inertia equals angular momentum of Earth around the sun. Now, this is why Newton had to acknowledge these fictitious forces. He had to acknowledge it. Okay? But he had to say they weren't real and they weren't actual. Fictitious force. So this is very interesting now, because what this means is if we have, I wish I had a picture for you guys here. I don't think I do. I'll show you a video or something in a second, and I'll explain it to you. But the point is, basically, if you have the, just like it's being explained here, and being explained here, and being explained here, and here, and here, right? It might be called the gravitational magnetic field generated by the rotation of the set of distant galaxies. Then if you had the entire cosmos moving around the Earth, you would have a real inertial, a real set of inertial forces. They wouldn't be fictitious. They would be real inertial forces also acting just like this depiction here, right? Where you have the centripetal and centrifugal effects. You have the inertial effects of the angular momentum of the entire universe moving around the sun. This explains this quote right here. I'm trying to make sure that I click with you guys here. In order for the Earth to be at rest in the center of the system of the sun, planets, and comets, there is required both universal gravity and another force, in addition, that acts on all bodies equally according to the quantity of matter in each of them, and is equal and opposite to the accelerative gravity with which the Earth tends to the sun, and thus celestial bodies can move around the Earth at rest as in the Tychonic system. So you needed another force. Well, that's what you have as soon as you understand that, in fact, the entire universe, the entire cosmos is moving. Now, he treated it as absolute. And since he did not conceive of the idea that the entire cosmos could just be moving around, not just the objects moving within what you call space, but space itself, the whole universe moving together around the Earth, then you would have the very thing that he said would be required for the Earth to be at rest, which is this equal and opposite actual force. So according to Newton himself, right here, according to Newton himself in this final page, this original handwritten page here, Theorem 22, Proposition 43, that didn't make the final publication for whatever reason. According to him himself, right, the Earth could be at rest, and according to Newtonian mechanics, if there was another force. Well, if he had not had a fixed frame of the universe, okay, then he would have had the inertial forces that would have been real and thus equal and opposite and satisfied the very parameters he outlined that would be necessary for the Earth to be at rest with everything moving around it. He simply said that space was at rest. It was absolute. It was fixed. So you don't have your inertial forces when all of space, meaning the entire cosmos itself, move around the Earth. You do have those forces. It would satisfy this very thing, which means when Einstein had to then get rid of the absolute space, like right here, the notion of absolute space lost its physical meaning as soon as the special principle of relativity was generally accepted. As soon as he did this, right? For as a consequence of this principle, it became impossible by any experiment to decide which system of inertia had to be regarded as the absolute system. As soon as Einstein proposed relativity and then removed the fixed absolute reference frame of space, the fixed absolute nature of space, as Newton had previously said, as soon as he did that, he then had to acknowledge that there is a real set of inertial forces that are not fictitious, but rather actual, and thus that the Earth could in fact be the center of the universe or the cosmos, and that it would translate motion down to the Earth and drag the pendulum. Now, this is one of the current rebuttals that I always get. If that's true, now I'll clarify all this in a second. If that's true, then, well, Einstein first thought that, but later he said he made a mistake because the stars would have to go faster than the speed of light. Now, they say that Einstein said that. I haven't actually seen that Einstein said that. Someone else said that. Einstein didn't say that. He wouldn't say that. And we'll cover that next week. And next week will be a bombshell episode. Trust me. And hopefully it'll even make this one make more sense to you. But anyway, as it says here, which is pretty bad quality, huh? In the theory of special relativity, this is by Butterworth, an introduction to the theory of relativity, or not Butterworth, that's the publisher, but by W.G.V. Rosser. Okay, in the theory of special relativity, we used one coordinate system for the whole of space, and using the principle, we used one coordinate system for the whole of space, and using the principle of the constancy of the velocity of light, one could, in principle, use light signals to synchronize all the clocks at rest in the coordinate system. This is not possible in a rotating coordinate system. One must change one's idea of space and time in the presence of the centrifugal gravitational field. One cannot use one single coordinate system for the whole of space, but one must use infinitesimal local coordinate systems and allow the metric to vary from point to point. Relative to the stationary roundabout, the distant stars would have a velocity, and for sufficiently large values, or r, the stars would be moving relative to O prime with linear velocities exceeding, can't really even see it, the terrestrial value of the velocity of light. Dun dun dun. Okay, let's read that again. Relative to the stationary roundabout, the distant stars would have a velocity, I can't see it, and for sufficiently large values, the stars would be moving relative to O prime, exceeding, with linear velocities, exceeding the terrestrial value for the velocity of light. At first sight, this appears to be a contradiction of the conclusion derived in section 532, that the velocities of all material bodies must be less than c. However, this restriction is restricted to the theory of special relativity. According to the general theory, it is possible to choose local reference frames in which, over a limited volume of space, there is no gravitational field, and relative to such a reference frame, the velocity of light is equal to c. However, this is not true when gravitational fields are present. In addition to the lengths of rods and rates of clocks, the velocity of light is affected by a gravitational field in section 12.7. If gravitational fields are present, the velocities of either material bodies or of light can assume any numerical value depending on the strength of the gravitational field. If one considers the rotating roundabout as being at rest, the centrifugal gravitational field assumes enormous values at large distances. And it is consistent with the theory of general relativity for the velocities of distant bodies to exceed the speed of light under these conditions. Uh-oh. So, I know this is a lot, but hopefully people will rewatch it. But I'm going to try to break it all down pretty simply for you. So, I'm going to come back over here to make sure that we reiterate this point here. Okay. Now, this PDF in my Telegram again, t.me/WitsitStreams. Everybody can go check it. He quantitatively and mathematically, he does the math to show specifically. Now, this is what that Professor Bryant Myers guy was trying to tell me. But yeah, but if you actually read what Einstein's saying, he's saying that it would be way too small. Not so fast, actually. When you do the actual math, it shows that these two numerical equations show that general relativity does not yield the measured values of these quantities in the Earth's frame of reference. This analysis shows clearly that in general relativity, kinematically equivalent situations are not dynamically equivalent. The Coriolis term becomes similar to the Lorentz magnetic force. It might be called the gravitational magnetic field generated by the rotation of the set of distant galaxies around an Earth at rest. Therefore, the flattened figure of the Earth, or Foucault's pendulum, can no longer be utilized as proofs of the Earth's real rotation, and this is necessitated by the current heliocentric model. Okay, so I know that was a lot of maybe higher level stuff, but I'm going to come over here, and then we're going to go through some of it so we can make sure everyone fully understands it. Thank you for bearing with me. I know that was a bit much, but this is simply what it is, okay? If you believe in relativity, meaning that you believe in the current model, the heliocentric model, right? You have to believe in relativity. You have to. And it's the only thing that's been proposed that can even try to theoretically explain the heliocentric model. It's a requirement. You cannot use Newtonian mechanics. This is why they will only say, well, we can use Newtonian mechanics for the solar system, because they don't have to acknowledge this problem where if you use Newtonian mechanics outside the solar system, as you get further away, you start to get immense masses, immense distances, immense speeds that would then translate to the Earth, showing that the Earth can be completely at rest and explain all observable phenomena, and in fact better. So they say it just works as solar system. You will hear anti-flat earthers or I'm trying not to be so derogatory. You will hear heliocentric proponents try to tell you that, oh, well, it works perfect on the solar system. It's just a repeated script that they say. Okay, but you cannot use it past that. It immediately is a problem for you. In fact, it shows that doing the math and then just understanding the actual physics of it, the Earth at rest is the only viable situation, because you would then have what acts exactly like a magnetic force, right, acting on the Earth, and all of a sudden you don't have to worry about dark energy, you don't have any problems. It would make it more viable. So the last thing you want to do is go back to Newtonian mechanics, but you would have to actually be able to read the physicists that help explain it to you based upon the person that wrote your theory, based upon the current higher level actual understanding of your model, not mass attracting mass, and then just saying it. But if you want mass attracting mass, by all means, make sure you understand what comes with it. Now, of course, I do not believe in any of these theories, other than the principle of physics, which we'll cover in just a second, can actually be experimentally shown. That if you have a stationary system and you have stuff rotating around it, it will actually translate force down to the system. Meaning we could in fact experience a net centripetal inward force onto a stationary Earth from the entire cosmos moving around it. And again, what people try to say is that, so this is called the Machian principle. Ernst Mach came up with it, right? And I dropped his PDF in the Telegram. And now let me tell you what the heliocentric proponents will try to say. They will say, well, yeah, but Einstein in his letter, he says that it's just such a small amount, it doesn't matter. It's called frame dragging. Now, we're about to read a PDF in just a second. But it's interesting to understand that, in fact, that isn't correct. Okay? The math does work whenever you apply Newtonian, and when you apply Einsteinian, it doesn't even work for the pendulum. Einsteinian mathematics doesn't even work for the pendulum. You must use Newtonian, and it is equivalent physically to just the Earth being at rest and then there being like a magnetic force acting on the Earth. Therefore, it can no longer be considered proof of Earth's rotation, just like this guy said. This is your own framework, your own theories of physics. See, what this show is doing is aiming to inform you and educate you, at least so much so that you will go look into it and do some studying to figure out what exactly comes with the decision and then make your own decision. Okay? This show's about the heliocentric model, the theory of relativity, gravity within the current cosmology, the current heliocentric paradigm, and so that I can inform you guys on what it really is. So this, simply put, first, it was the Earth is moving around the sun kinematically. Then it's with something called dynamic forces from Newton. Then Newton said, oh, the space is just fixed. It's just sitting there. It's just forever there. It's absolute. And everything moves through it. And everything's moving through it, through around the sun, because there's something called gravity acting on it. But gravity has to be instant. According to the actual equation for gravity, it's instant. There is no variable for the time delay of the physical reaction. In the equation for gravity, there is no variable for the time of reaction, meaning that it would have to be instant. Now, I want to go ahead and let you guys know, like this this troll in the chat, or any of the trolls, you're never going to be able to have that. You're never going to get this high level of a conversation out of them. You have to ignore them. They aren't capable of doing this. This is for intellectuals. This is for people that want to learn. I'm breaking it down for you, where we're going to break it down really simply, okay? But this is real, and you should go verify it yourself, okay? So Newton says there's an absolute frame. Everything's moving through it. If you look at the equation for gravity, it requires it be instant. This is a very important part, okay? Everyone needs to pay attention. Sorry, but the way you put it is not the essence of Mach's principle, not by any stretch of the imagination. It objectively is, though. It objectively is. So it doesn't matter what you say. So, and he even details in the PDF, in the Telegram specifically, that applying the Machian principle to the rotation observed in the sky, that you could in fact say that everything moving around, example, in a hollow spherical shell, everything moving around a stationary Earth, you would have a translation of motion there. It's exactly how the Machian principle applies to what we're discussing, and he point blank says it. So, he's just a troll. Now, listen, this is the point. What you will notice, right, is that none of the trolls in the chat will be able to respond to this specifically, and this is for the intellectuals that want to learn. If you look at the equation for gravity, okay, it doesn't have a variable for time. How long it takes the interaction to happen. It doesn't have a time of reaction variable. It doesn't account for it. That means it's instant. Okay? That means it's instant. Now, this is what Newton was talking about when he said, I can't even wrap my mind around it. The idea that this object would act on this innate brute matter, would act on other innate brute matter through the vastness of a vacuum through great distances, is to me so great an absurdity that no man with competent faculty of thinking in philosophical matters could ever fall into it. And I do not wish that you ever attribute to me that gravity is innate inherent property of matter, and there must be something to actually exchange this, because seemingly instantaneous interaction is needed, which means there has to be something connecting it. And as to whether or not what it is that's connecting it is material or immaterial, I've left to the consideration of my readers. Okay, he couldn't understand it. Now, this is where you get into simultaneity within relativity. But we're going to cover that next week because you got to break these down bits by bits. And I know a lot of people will be like, Witsit? Why are you talking so much about relativity, blah, blah, blah. This is very important, okay? Because it's also going to play a role in us figuring out what's really going on. It's also important to show people and familiarize yourself with some of these basic principles so that you can then show people, look, man, you've heard that everyone knows the Earth's tilted, wobbling, spinning, revolving around the sun. Everyone knows there's a heliocentric model. Everyone's heard about the solar system since they were 5. We know the solar system. According to their own physics, their own math, their own paradigm, you could never know. And when it comes to the pendulum supposedly showing rotation and the ring laser gyro, it doesn't actually work. It doesn't work to show exclusively that the Earth is rotating according to their own physics and their own math. Their own principle of physics proposed in their theories, not scientific theories, meaning that they're just kind of, it's just theoretical physics. And then their own math. It shows that you cannot claim that the pendulum or that the ring laser gyro actually detects the Earth's rotation at all. Now, of course, in a more fundamental sense, right? This is correlation and causation. You can't look at something and then affirm the consequent, assume the very thing you're claiming to prove at the onset of what it is that you're proposing. You can't beg the question and say, oh, well, since the Earth is rotating, this is spinning because of Earth rotation. You can't do that. And correlation doesn't equal causation. But it's even worse than that. Okay? All the experiments added up over time, like Michelson-Morley, Airy's failure, then Michelson-Gale-Pearson, all of these combined and replicated and consistent forced the heliocentric model into a paradigm that had to adopt relativity. You have to. There's no way around it. And when you adopt relativity to keep the belief system that the Earth is revolving around the sun, you immediately concede that the Earth could be at rest, stationary, a fixed absolute frame, in fact, the only absolute frame, and that everything is moving in relation to it, and that, if that's the case, that there would be an equivalence principle, therefore there would actually be a translation of motion, Coriolis, Euler, and centrifugal effects, and onto the Earth, towards the Earth, based on the angular momentum of the universe or the cosmos moving around the Earth. And in fact, it would be perpetual, and then it would thus be self-sustained, right? Which is very interesting because still a debated concept in physics is the idea that, well, does the object really just keep going without another force acting upon it? Does it not need something to be introduced at some point in time to keep it going, right? So anyway, that's a deeper idea when it gets into like the idea of way out there in space, and it ends up getting, anyway, the point is that if you believe the current model, you have to believe relativity. That means that if you actually understand it, you have to believe this. Now, what you're going to get is a bunch of trolls and a bunch of insults, a bunch of like mockery, but they can't even get close to addressing this. They cannot, there is no rebuttal to this. This is a fact. Okay, and maybe I'll run this by the professor that comes here, the astronomer, PhD astronomer that comes on here. We're supposed to come next week. We switched it to this week. He needed to switch it. So maybe I'll run this by him. I'll run it to the professionals. But you're going to have these trolls here. They can't hang, bro. Right? So, like, don't worry about them. The point here is that if everything moves around the Earth, you would get similar and same effects, and this must be acknowledged. And therefore, the pendulum, according to relativity and heliocentrism, can no longer be considered exclusive proof or evidence that the Earth is rotating, causing the pendulum to move. And in fact, something as simple as a magnetic force, right, or what they call a magnetic gravitational force or effect or field acting on the Earth because of this angular momentum of everything moving around the Earth, which, by the way, it does, right? Look, like, get some education on how pendulums work. Think about this. This troll thinks he's going to somehow refute what I just showed, but he'll never be able to do it, right? And I just want to make sure. I think it's beneficial just to show how stupid some of the rebuttals are, alleged rebuttals, right? As soon as this guy can go grab that PDF and explain to me how where his math is wrong, then that would be amazing. Right. it would be amazing. Because here he is actually using relativistic math. He's actually using Einstein-Newtonian physics, and he's actually using the Machian principle. He's using the implications, the equivalence principle, the covariance principle. All these are within relativity. He's showing the necessity, the physical necessities of applying this to the claimed model, and that's why he explains right here that the flattened figure of the Earth, or Foucault's pendulum, can no longer be utilized as proofs of the Earth's real rotation. In relational mechanics, both facts can be equally explained with the frame of distant galaxies at rest, exerting a gravitational force on bodies at the Earth's surface, while the Earth rotates relative to this frame, or with the Earth at rest, while the distant galaxies rotate around it, exerting a gravitational force on the bodies at the Earth's surface. Both explanations are equally correct and yield the same results. It then becomes a matter of convenience or of convention to choose the Earth, the distant galaxies, or any other body of frame or frame of reference to be considered at rest. Okay. It's just a fact. Now, I'm about to start putting people in timeout, dude. That's what I think. All right, but I got it. You guys don't have to worry about it. All right. So anyway, we got that covered. It was somewhat redundant, but it is important. Okay, it is important to understand. Now, what we're gonna do is kind of go through some of these PDFs a little bit. Let me see. All right. How dare you? In a world. All right, 226. Jeez Louise. In memory of Isaac Newton. All right, relational mechanics. All right. Dr. Andre Assis, Institute of Physics, State University of Campinas in Brazil. Or YouTube trolls. I don't know. Now, I'm not appealing to this guy's authority. We're actually going to look at the actual physical explanation and mechanics. Okay. Obviously, just because someone says something doesn't mean anything. I can tell you that them saying you don't even understand it is a projection. So here it is in the paper right here, right? General relativity, we must include in force not only the local forces like the Earth's gravity acting on the test body, but also the real gravitational force exerted by the spinning distant universe acting on the test body. Okay, point blank. And here we go. We already read this. We'll come down further. It has all the calculations to explain the entire thing. There is no rebuttal. Why is someone timing him out? Why is someone timing YouTube out? That doesn't make any sense. Hey, flat hawks. Everyone just ignore him. Everyone just ignore him. And if he starts spamming, then that's when he's gonna get punished. If he does a little fit like he has to get attention, so he's spamming. The trolls will just get taken care of me. I don't think we should be blocking YouTube. I don't know why. Anyway. Okay. But it would be ideal if you guys just don't feed them. Okay. The rotation of the Earth around its axis relative to the fixed stars explains its oblate form with a smaller distance between the poles and then at the equator between east and west. Foucault's pendulum is explained by noting that the plane of oscillation remains fixed relative to the fixed stars. The Ptolemaic system, the Earth is considered to be at rest without rotation in the center of the universe, while the sun, other planets, and fixed stars rotate around the Earth. In relational mechanics, this rotation of distant matter yields the force such that the equation of motion takes the form of equation 8.47. Now, the gravitational attraction of the sun is balanced by a real gravitational centrifugal force due to the annual rotation of distant masses around the Earth, with a component having a period of 1 year. In this way, the Earth can remain at rest and at an essentially constant distance from the sun. The diurnal rotation of distant masses around the Earth yields a real gravitational centrifugal force, flattening the Earth at the poles. Foucault's pendulum is explained by a real Coriolis force acting on the moving masses over the Earth's surface in the form of equation, where equation is the velocity of the test body relative to the Earth and the angular rotation of the distant masses around the Earth. The rotation of this force will be to keep the plane of oscillation of the pendulum rotating together with the fixed stars. Okay, so anyway, this is the PDF I was telling you guys about, and here we go, implementation of Einstein's ideas, where he then comes down to explain exactly what's wrong with it. He applies relational mechanics to the claim of the pendulum, right? This dude's obviously operating within the assumption of sphericity, but it doesn't matter. It shows that anyone claiming to push this mainstream model and claiming that the Foucault's pendulum proves it is actually a heliocentric heretic. They don't understand their own position, which is the vast majority of people that believe in it. Okay, so we covered the primary conclusions here anyway. I think it might be. I forgot the page number I said. 226? Yeah, here we go. Foucault's pendulum, right? And so he explains you can go down, it's 226 and 222 in the PDF and 219 in the actual paper, okay? And he explains right here very simply that the Earth being at rest you can fully explain the pendulum, right? Becomes similar to Lorentz magnetic force. It might be called the gravitational magnetic field generated by the rotation of the set of distant galaxies. Now this can be the idea can be demonstrated in physical reality, right? Right? Like moving current generates magnetic field, Faraday, right? That's the difference here, is that this is a real idea of physics, but no, I think there's like a fluid-like medium, you know, and gravitation is actually just a hijacking of electromagnetism in different modalities, different forms, different reactions within that medium, a much closer, more dense medium. I don't even assume material. Again, right here is explaining that with the Earth at rest, you can fully explain it, and we'll come right down here. The flattened figure of the Earth, which, of course, I don't believe in this idea that the Earth is flattened, but it's a sphere, obviously. But people claim that's because the Earth spins, as if it's proof. And they claim that Foucault's pendulum proves that the Earth spins. That's from 1851, and like Einstein and them, they knew it wasn't. But all the anti-flat earthers on the internet, the anti-realists, we'll call them, you know, all these people that have YouTube channels that constantly bash people questioning cosmology and stuff like that, they will swear up and down that Foucault's pendulum proves the Earth is a tilted, wobbling, spinning ball, guaranteed no way around it. And of course, it's again begging the question, affirming the consequent conflation of correlation and causation. But even beyond that, within their own paradigm, it is not. Again, the flattened figure of the Earth or Foucault's pendulum can no longer be utilized as proofs of the Earth's rotation. In fact, it goes on to show you that relativistic application to Foucault's pendulum doesn't even work, and it's 5 times the Coriolis effect. It doesn't work at all. Okay, moving on. So anyone thinking that the pendulum proves that the Earth is it's rotating, doesn't understand their own model and belief. The Foucault's pendulum does not prove that the Earth rotates according to their own physics. And what you will find is they will still continue to say it anyway. Ignore them. This is for the people that are actually interested in learning. Why is one of the mainstream primary ways they claim to prove that the Earth rotates the pendulum when it actually doesn't prove it? Maybe it's because they have nothing else and the Earth is actually stationary. I missed your super chat. I will read it in just a second. I'll go check the super chats. It popped up on my screen. I'll go read it in a second. I'll read all of them after I go through the PowerPoints. All right, next one. This is Newtonian Machian analysis of the neo-Tychonic model of planetary motions. We read this quote already, right? So this is also in my Telegram. And here it is showing you the geocentric position, showing you the actual trajectories, and thus the physical force exerted on the stationary Earth. And here he explains that effectively it would just go perpetually forever, right? All right. Oh, that's like is he like a fake guy? Anyway. All right. Now, here is another one that we read. If we were to adopt a frame of reference like Tycho's in which the Earth is at rest. So we already looked at that one. Here's the other PDF. This is Ernst Mach. We could do a whole stream on that. Maybe at some point we will. Someone said this is not even what the Machian principle is. They have never read any of this, obviously. Now, I haven't read the entire thing. 632 pages. But that is exactly what it is. It's in my PDF. I'll probably go more extensively into it. This is just to refute the claim that the ring laser gyro and the pendulum prove the Earth's rotating. It doesn't, not even according to the actual physics they claim to purport is the case in order to propose the heliocentric model. The fact that the Earth is a ball that spins requires these physics that require you concede that it doesn't prove the Earth's rotating. Basically, these people that run around the internet are heliocentric heretics. It's interesting to fully understand this, though. Why is it still brought up as if it is proof the Earth's rotating when the actual physics of the theories that we have had to use to explain the Earth being a ball that rotates actually says it doesn't in any way prove it, and in fact, relativity doesn't even work to mathematically predict it. Okay, using relational mechanics. All right, here we go. The principle of equivalence. What page is this? 238. Theory of Relativity, Christian Mahler. Come back down here to 238. Oh, I could have just typed it in. What a weirdo. Okay. The interpretation of the fictitious forces as gravitational forces is corroborated decisively by the fact that they have an essential property in common with the usual gravitational fields, the property to give all free particles the same acceleration respective to the mass of the particles. It's immediately clear that the fictitious forces have this property, and Galileo was the first to prove this property for the gravitational field of the Earth. As a result of his experiments, he was able to make the statement that all bodies are falling with equal speed in empty space. This result simply expresses the fact that the force with which the gravitational field of the Earth affects a particle is proportional to the inertial mass of the particle, which determines the inertia of the particle against changes of motion, as long as the velocity of the particle is small relative to the velocity of light. Okay. And this entire thing is explaining exactly what we covered a second ago, right? Which, again, it was just this reason that Newtonian... Let's read just above that. However, it seems to be rather difficult beforehand to acknowledge the accelerated systems of reference as equivalent to the systems of inertia as regards to the description of natural phenomena. You mean like relativity claims? When in the following chapters we speak of an accelerated system, simply we always have in mind a system accelerated relative to the systems of inertia or to fixed stars. For example, if we consider a purely mechanical system consisting of a number of material particles acted upon by given forces and with velocity small compared with the velocity of light relative to the system of inertia, inertia meaning unchanging, at rest, Newton's fundamental equations of mechanics may be applied with a good approximation in the description of the system. On the other hand, if we wish to describe the system in an accelerated system of reference, we must introduce, as is well known, so-called fictitious forces, centrifugal forces, Coriolis forces, etc. Okay. Which have no connection whatever with the physical properties of the mechanical system itself. Wow. So all it means is that if the Earth's at rest and the cosmos moving around it, the forces would be actual. They would be real. Okay, that's why I'm trying to make sure you guys understand this. It was just for this reason that Newton introduced the concept of absolute space, which would present the system of reference where the laws of nature assume the simplest and most natural form. Okay. Now let's get to where we can really talk about this some. Okay. This is the principle of relativity and inertial dragging, University College Department of Engineering, Oslo University. It is by this guy. I can't read him. We'll just call him Øyvind Gran. All right. Mach's principle and the principle of relativity have been discussed by Hartmann and Sabat in this journal. Several phenomena were said to violate the principle of relativity as applied to rotating motion. Guys, stick with me. I know this is information heavy and I'm just reading a lot, but we're almost there. However, in neither of these articles have the general relativistic phenomenon of inertial dragging been invoked, and no calculation have been offered by either side to substantiate their claims. Here I discuss the possible validity of the principle of relativity for rotating motion within the context of general relativity, and point out the significance of inertial dragging in this connection. Although my main points are of a qualitative nature, I also provide the necessary calculations to demonstrate how these points come out as consequences of the general theory of relativity. Okay, meaning, if you believe in the heliocentric model and the general theory of relativity, if you don't believe in the general theory of relativity, you cannot believe in the heliocentric model, as that's the only way to explain Michelson-Morley, as you have to claim that all frames of reference are relative, there's a constant speed of light, and that speed is absolute in all reference frames for all observers. Therefore, there is no actual absolute reference frame against which the perpendicular light ray would have been measured. Therefore, there's no way to detect or measure the Earth's motion around the sun, because all motion is relative. While you're on the Earth that's moving around the sun, you cannot in fact detect it. You must measure it relative to an inertial system. Therefore, you cannot tell that the Earth goes around the sun. That's the explanation for why they couldn't measure it when they had interferometry, cross patterns of light beams over 10 times more sensitive than it needed to be to measure the orbit, and it failed to do so. You have to adopt a relativistic approach to explain the Earth revolving around the sun. This is a necessity of relativity. Let's continue. The necessity of relativity being, one can ascribe all pertinent observations solely to relative motion between a system and the universe, as these people have argued, allegedly. But they considered When Einstein presented the general theory of relativity, he emphasized the importance of the general principle of relativity, which is what we were just discussing. In a section titled "The Need for an Extension of the Postulate of Relativity," he formulated the principle of relativity in the following way. The laws of physics must be of such a nature that they apply to the systems of reference in any kind of motion. According to the special principle of relativity, an unaccelerated observer may regard himself as at rest. In the general theory, an observer with any kind of motion can regard himself as at rest. Okay. According to the special principle of relativity, an unaccelerated observer may regard himself as at rest. In the general theory of an observer with any kind of motion can regard himself as at rest. Meaning, of course, listen, unaccelerated, meaning it's not accelerating, it's not changing. Acceleration, change in velocity. So if you have constant velocity, then that would be different. If you have an unaccelerated, you'd be like constant velocity. But if you had acceleration, you couldn't consider yourself to be at rest according to the special principle of relativity. But in the general theory, an observer with any kind of motion, whether that be acceleration, unaccelerated, can regard himself as at rest. Okay. It is far from obvious that this principle is a consequence of the theory of relativity. Its possible validity depends in a decisive way upon the phenomena of inertial dragging. Christian Moeller has written in the following about this. Einstein advocated a new interpretation of the fictitious forces in accelerated systems of reference. Instead of regarding them as an expression of a difference in principle between the fundamental equations and uniformly moving and accelerated systems, he considered both kinds of reference to be completely equivalent as regards the form of the fundamental equation, and the fictitious forces, quote unquote, were treated as real forces on the same footing as any other forces of nature. The reason for the occurrence in accelerated systems of reference of such peculiar forces should, according to this new idea, be sought in the circumstance that the distant masses of the fixed stars are accelerated relative to these systems of reference. The fictitious forces are thus treated as a kind of gravitational force, the acceleration of the distant masses causing a field of gravitation in the system of reference considered. I will here discuss the relation. I don't want to just read way too much, even though we're pretty close here. Anyway, so you have inertial dragging and a linearly accelerating thing. Let's just move on. I will here discuss the relativity of rotational motion.
within the context of the general theory of relativity. Then the phenomena of inertial dragging is essential. The idea, of course, that the system's at rest, and then there's an equivalence of everything moving around the Earth, or the Earth being in motion, right? It's equivalent. You can flip it back and forth. They're the same thing, right? You have the covariance and the equivalence principle. And these are very important, and most people don't seem to understand what they are when they believe in this model. Most people think, mass attracting masses as far as it goes. They don't know anything about the model. It is of not. Let me come over here to kind of give you guys a break with all this. Sorry, I know this is super information heavy. I'm sorry. Most people don't know anything about this, and I get it. And you may think, what exactly can I take away from this? Well, it's very simple. I explained it to you. I gave you even just take screenshots of a couple of the things you can show. Like, look, even Newton said the Earth could be at rest. Now you have a general idea of how it works. And the only thing that Newton didn't consider was if the entire cosmos is moving around the Earth. Okay. Now, I'm explaining this because these are major like philosophical ineptitudes. I don't know if I should use it like that, but the philosophical ineptitude of many of these people that have pushed forth this idea is pretty easily seen through once you pull the curtain back and realize some of the physical consequences of their claims. Okay? And this is one of them. Okay? Frame dragging, right? Which explains that the pendulum would be dragged around if the Earth was at rest, but the entire cosmos was moving around it. Well, there's not really any other option. Newton just didn't think about the whole universe. He said, we'll keep the universe fixed, then we'll have everything moving around the Earth, or the Earth moving around everything else, everything moving through fixed space. Well, if there was fixed space, then what's going on with Michelson-Morley? Einstein specifically says there is no such thing as fixed anything. Space is not fixed. Everything is relative. Okay. So if everything is relative, then we have to understand what that means. What that means is the Earth could be at rest, and everything we observe will be exactly like if the Earth was at rest. And that means that if the Earth is spinning, that's going to be the same as if the Earth is at rest, and then the cosmos is spinning around it. Period. And if you actually look at the entire situation, right, you get your sidereal rotation because of a real set of forces coming from the sky. Euler forces, Coriolis forces, centrifugal forces. And I explained that if you have a centrifugal force and then you have the Coriolis force, right, so you have the angular momentum of the entire cosmos moving around the Earth. That angular momentum is going to translate motion, okay? And this is admittedly even without mediums. And when you get into the fact that there is for sure a medium translating it, it's like, this is clearly what's happening. It's clearly what's happening on the Earth. The cosmos moves around us. Anyway, so you have the angular momentum, right? And if you actually account for the forces properly, it would be perpetual. Would need no extra energy introduced. And this is according to all the physics needed to even pretend the Earth could be a spinning revolving ball. Like, this is legitimately what you have to understand. I'm not just saying this for no reason. It's important to understand this before you make your decision. So anyway, if you have the Earth stationary and then the sky moving around it, Machian principle, transference, basically the equivalence principle as well, you would have the same effects if the Earth were at rest or if the Earth was rotating. Relativity necessitates this. Mach pointed this out. Einstein acknowledged it. He then absorbs it, and then someone later on says, that wouldn't work because the speed of light would have to be going way faster. Someone else, not Einstein. Now, the reason Einstein didn't have anything to say is he already knew, and wait till next week where I show you Einstein himself saying it. Dun, dun, dun. He knew that in special relativity, he explains Michelson-Morley, explains it away, right? He says that there's a constant speed of light, and that's the finite amount information or anything can actually go. That's like the speed limit of the universe, right? C, speed of light, constant. And then he said that everything is relative, effectively. There are no such thing as absolute reference frames. All motion is relative. Okay, so you got like special relativity, explaining Michelson-Morley away, right? But then you get over to general relativity, that he made out of necessity. He realized it doesn't account for gravity. It doesn't account for many other things, like anything outside of a straight path. It doesn't even account for gravity at all. Doesn't explain. He realized that the claims he made about in special relativity spilled over into the claims of the orbital mechanics of the sky within the assumed heliocentric model, and that you would then have to replace it, right? Or he would actually effectively be refuting modern cosmology at the time, heliocentrism. So anyway, then he makes general relativity, where in which he finds out that he actually has to contradict himself and physically allow something to exceed the speed of light. We're going to cover that next week. People are going to be like, no way. Yes way. So when people say this wouldn't work because it had to go faster than the speed of light, Einstein himself contradicted his initial special theory with his general theory, allowing, due to the principles he invoked in his writing, allowing for there to be something faster than the speed of light. And we're going to cover it next week. Anyway, all that being said, could they be moving faster than the speed of light? Maybe. I don't know how far away any of this stuff is. And I don't even know, what is light? What is moving faster than the speed of light? Of course it could be, because it's just a etheric excitation or disturbance. So, and then really, is it an fluid-like medium? How close is it? Anyway, so all over the place there, but I wanted to give you a break where I wasn't just reading. It's a very simple concept, right? It's I know that I wanted to present like hostile witnesses that are built upon the specific parameters of relativity in the heliocentric model. All you're going to get is people diverting away and obfuscating away from it. I thought about making it a little bit more extensive, but I didn't want it to get too over the top. Yeah, we'll talk about it later. The person keeps asking about latitude. For one, I actually can't explain the motion relative to latitude. But I'm saving that for later as well, because I'm still looking for verification that there is a consistent effect that changes to the equator, and then at the equator, the pendulum doesn't precess at all. And then when you go below it, it begins to precess the opposite way all the way down the latitudes. There isn't evidence for that. In fact, the quote-unquote claimed evidence of the pendulum in the south is such a joke. It's such a joke. My point is just that even if all that exists, according to relativity itself, doesn't prove that the Earth is spinning, which means if you choose to ignore that, this is the reason for the stream. If you choose to ignore that, you're lying to yourself. You're being dishonest. You're being intellectually dishonest, and you're lying to yourself, right? And you're lying to others, especially when you go attack them. You're lying. If you want to believe the Earth is a tilted, wobbling, spinning, revolving sphere in a vacuum, by all means do it. But make sure you know what it is that you believe, certainly prior to ridiculing other people for not believing in the solar system the way that you think it works because you just remember it from when you were 5. Okay? You have to know what it means. And what it actually means is, in its current state, which is not mass attracting mass, and it's not Newtonian mechanics, according to the only version of the heliocentric model that's been proposed to date, because it's the only one that can be even theoretically pretended to be true, right? You can even pretend to be true theoretically. Is that if the Earth is at rest, everything's exactly the same, including even the pendulum, ring laser gyro, sidereal rotation effects being translated to the Earth, right? And this includes the ring laser gyro. Now, I have all kinds of different sources, but I'm not just going to just like bury you in sources. So, totally, there is evidence. There literally isn't. Like, I bet you can't ask any person here, can you provide the actual empirical evidence that can be verified showing that there's no precession at the equator of a pendulum? Can you show me that it just does, it moves up right above the equator, then stops and doesn't do anything at the equator and then continues below it? None of them has ever seen it. It doesn't exist. They believe it because they just blindly believe what they're told. Including the South, it's almost all museums that admittedly you can literally go and mess with and set the amount of deviation that's expected for that latitude so that it keeps working in the museum, which is hilarious. It's hilarious. So I can actually integrate it, and I almost did it this show. I wanted to show you I can 100% but this is not about specifically about like the topographical nature of the Earth. This is about relatively simple, meaning it's about the idea that the Earth couldn't be in the center. Oh, yes, it could. according to the heliocentric model and the staple of all of it, it could 100% be in the middle. And we're going to break all that down. We're going to break down the implications of it. We're going to show the history of how they came up with this insane pseudoscientific tell that you're insignificant and don't have a special or unique position and everything is random and doesn't matter and you're flying through space and all this crazy stuff. We're going to show how that is blatantly pseudoscience. In fact, it's a religion. Well, you'll find out it's usually a religion for atheists. Not just that atheists believe in it, but it is a religion for atheists. They need that. They need to be spinning, tilted, wobbling, revolving. They need it. It's not an option for them. No matter what, they need it, right? And so we'll get into a bunch of the misnomers so that at the least you can start to get towards the truth where you find out like, oh, well, in fact, the Earth seemingly is geocentric, and I have to stop kidding myself. I need to inform myself. So, all right, moving on. We're almost done because I guess we're pushing 2 hours already. Okay, the phenomena of inertial dragging is essential. Its existence is a prediction of a general theory of relativity. The effect was discussed thoroughly by Lenz and Thirring, and is therefore also called the Lenz-Thirring effect. Its relation to Newtonian gravity is like that of magnetism in relation to the Coulomb force. Wow. Therefore, it is also called the gravitomagnetic effect. Ooh. Gravitomagnetic effect. Isn't that interesting, huh? Again, when it's talking about inertial dragging, you have the inertial frame, and then you have something being dragged upon it or within it, and within the inertial frame, meaning unchanging, right? Because of motion outside of it. Okay? Inertial dragging. Lenz-Thirring. Its relation to Newtonian gravity is like that of magnetism in relation to the Coulomb force. Therefore, it is also called the gravitomagnetic effect. Now, if these people want to go back to invoking Newton, dude, it's like way better for geocentrism, but relativity is also good for... Both of them lose to geocentrism, even theoretically. It's very interesting. It's fascinating for an intellectual, not for a religious person that's devoted to heliocentrism so they can just deny a creator, etc. All right, the effect is often discussed in relation to the Kerr space-time outside a rotating mass distribution such as the Earth. Of course, the Kerr metric is what they tried to use to explain the perihelion shift of Mercury, and that failed miserably. In local frames in which Newton's first law is valid, they are dragged around by the rotation of the Earth. Due to the weakness of gravity, the rotation of the inertial frames outside the Earth is extremely slow. The inertial frames use 30 million years to rotate one time around the Earth. However, the existence of this effect has recently been confirmed by measurements. Okay, here we go. Dr. H. Brill and J. M. Cohen showed that inside a rotating massive shell, the effect can be large. You remember Professor Bryant Myers and McLooney Tunes and all these people just laughing at me, right? You remember that? Well, it actually can be demonstrated physically. Huh. They found that the inertial frames rotate with the same angular velocity as that of the shell in the limit where the Schwarzschild radius of the shell is equal to its radius. This is called perfect dragging. The Machian character of this result was emphasized by Brill and Cohen, who wrote, "A shell of matter of radius equal to its Schwarzschild radius has often been taken as an idealized cosmological model of our universe. Our result shows that in such a model, there cannot be a rotation of the local inertial frame in the center relative to the large masses of the universe. In this sense, our result explains why the fixed stars, quote unquote, are indeed fixed in our inertial frame, and in this sense, the result is consistent with Mach's principle. The phenomenon of perfect dragging has recently been demonstrated by C. Schmid in the context of expanding flat universe models rotating slowly. A simple argument for this is as following, as noted by Brian Greene. Objects so far from us that light, or the effect of gravity, has not had sufficient time since the Big Bang to reach us cannot influence us. So basically, they're trying to dismiss it with a reification of the current model. Right, and we'll get into that in just a second. It follows that the condition, right here, like, maybe we do need to read it, but it follows that the condition for perfect dragging is fulfilled in our universe. Again, all this is dropped in my Telegram. I don't want to just keep reading the whole time. Okay, and then we'll just get into the speed of light. There's no way we have time to do it now. I mean, it's just like, yikes. physics. That was a lot. I know that was a lot. I know it's information heavy. Like I said, you have the PDFs. I wanted to break it down for you. This is the thing, right? You're going to hear a bunch of people just say all kinds of stuff. I want to give you a summary. Now I'm going to cut it to you straight. I gave you the information. I gave you the PDFs. I broke it down in a presentation. I showed you the PDFs. The PDFs are in the Telegram. This is the reality of the situation, right? The pendulum doesn't prove the Earth is rotating. The ring laser gyro doesn't prove the Earth is rotating. They had to make up the theory of relativity, which is fundamentally different and contrary to Newtonian mechanics. They are not the same thing. Only someone that is ignorant would ever say that they're the same thing. Mass attracting mass, Newton, totally different than the theory of relativity, Einstein. Completely different. It had to be replaced. It's not the same at all, okay? The fact that there is mathematical commonality is absolutely insane to pretend that that's somehow the same thing. Physics is a way to try to explain what happens in the world. Natural science, the study of the natural world. You have physics. Some people propose theories to try to explain how the physics works. It's an attempt to explain the world. Math is just what you use to describe your theory. It's what you use to describe the world. It isn't an explanation. Math describes, science explains. The fact that there's an effect that's mathematically described, and then there are a bunch of different theories trying to explain it. It doesn't matter that they're all using the same math that they're trying to explain. That's super remedial. So to say, you're so stupid, or the Mach people and say like, oh, Newtonian and Einsteinian both use the same equation, or they both have G in their equations. Yeah, that's the effect that's quantified within the assumption of the model, right? Description. And it's all built upon the agreed upon average of things falling down. It's a measured average, but it's an agreed upon where to place it because it fluctuates consistently based on where you are and other conditions, right? So perfect example, this is how stupid that argument is, that Einstein and Newton are the same. Einsteinian physics and Newtonian physics are the same because they have similar math, or you can compare the math and transform the math. Think about how ignorant that is. Okay, object, 9.8 meters per second squared. We have general relativity. We have Einstein. We have Newtonian mechanics. We have modified Newtonian dynamics. We have push gravity trying to explain it. We have electromagnetic gravity trying to explain it. We have a kinematic equation that can solve for 9.8 meters per second squared. So we have all these different things. All of them use 9.8 meters per second squared, okay? One of them says that gravity is the effect of the bending and warping of space-time. One of them seems to imply that gravity would be the inherent innate property of matter, doesn't explain it would have to be instantaneous and require some type of medium, also known as Newtonian physics. One of them claims that there's actually a reciprocation of gravity within the background field called push gravity, and there's a repulsion equal and opposite reaction that's intrinsically electromagnetic. It's called push gravity. Also solves for the same value, okay? We have all these different modified Newtonian dynamics that completely throws out Einstein and everything relative, and then tries to modify Newtonian to figure it out. There's different versions of it, basically tying into the idea of string theory typically, or loop theory, okay? All these are fundamentally different. One of them says gravity's electromagnetic, okay? One of them says gravity is the effect of bending and warping of space-time. They're all trying to explain the same value. So to say that the same value exists, so therefore Newton and Einstein are the same, is very remedial. Very, very, very remedial. And to say, oh, well, we can use Newton just fine on most of the universe and the solar system. Yeah, because as soon as you extend it past the solar system, you're in trouble, because you have to then acknowledge what's going on with, is it a fixed background of space? Is it not a fixed background of space? And then what's up with the inertial forces? Are they fictitious or are they real? Because relativity says they're real, and real as any other force. And then Newton specifically says they're fictitious. And in that sense that they are not real. They can only be observed within a certain situation, but they're not actual and real forces. Fundamentally different things. They have different effects on the idea of, is the Earth at rest or is it not? Okay? This is all facts. Like, it doesn't matter what anyone says. If someone tries to mock you saying that they're the same thing, whenever you say Einstein superseded Newton and they tell you that he didn't, they're objectively wrong and inept. And so there's no reason to really even worry about those people. They don't understand their belief. It's like if you ever talk to someone about the Bible and then they don't know what the Bible says, but they believe it, or like, that's what it is. It's like a religion. People oftentimes believe things they don't understand. They say that other people did it for me. Oh, well, there are other scientists that have studied their whole life that know more about this from me. I'm going to trust them. There are other physicists that do this. Oh, there are doctors that do this. Oh, there are scientists that have figured out these theories and know more about it than me. I'm just going to trust what they say. There are priests that have read the book and studied it more than me, and the priests tell me what it is that it says. So I'm just going to trust the priests, and then I'm going to believe what they say. It's a religion. It's a religious type of thinking. It's just handing over your thought and it is what it is. Now, this stream is strictly for people that are individual thinkers, that can critically assess information on their own, that does not conform to consensus. It doesn't mean you have to agree or disagree with conclusions that I have or anyone else has. I strongly suggest you don't just agree with conclusions that other people have. That is the death of knowledge. Conformity is the death of knowledge, okay? Think for yourself, do the research, diligently figure it out. And I'm pointing out to you that, in summary, it's being somewhat redundant, right? That if there is, you have the ring laser gyro. How does the ring laser gyro pick up 15 degrees per hour? Because there's, of course, sidereal rotation in the sky above us. We all know that. That's where we got the concept of time, which is not actually linear. That's just how we conceive of it. That's how we perceive it. And that's how we quantify it for a construct for intents and purposes, right? Time is the conceptual quantification of motion and change. In fact, the motion that we get time from is actually not linear, right? It's actually perpetual. It's rotational. It's in a circle. It's continuous. Continuous, not linear. But we quantify it linear because you can meet me tomorrow at 8. Wednesday, I'm schooling the Globers at 9, right? In the future, quote unquote. That's why we use the concept. So what's super crazy about that is that the state of affairs of heliocentrism got so incredibly dumb and backwards and paradoxical and contradictory and so blatantly refuted. He had to then take that idea and say that it was causing physical things to happen. It was physically acting on matter, and that space and time bends and warps. Okay? Now, I actually have other things I could have showed you. Like, let's see if I have it. I'll pull it up right here. I'll just integrate that into next week. I'll integrate into next week, right? Where actually, according to relativity, space-time can bend and warp, which means the necessitated that it can also straighten out. And if it can then go back and forth, straightening out and curving, straighten out, curving, straighten out, curving, then why would it not have to be classified as vibrational? There's so many things to this. Any person trying to pretend that they have the whole universe figured out and it's like this dumbed down remedial thing they remember from second grade about, we're the third planet from the sun and we go around the sun every single year. Like, I promise you it's not. There is no actual empirical evidence that the Earth is rotating. Okay? All of that evidence, the ring laser gyro and the pendulum, are admittedly within the physics of the theory of relativity and Newtonian physics. Both of the theories of gravity that were proposed in the history of the heliocentric model, both of them necessitate that you admit that those exact things, the exact way that it happens, could happen because the Earth's at rest and there's angular momentum of the entire cosmos moving around a stationary Earth. And if you deny this, you deny relativity, you deny Newtonian physics, which is outdated and doesn't work for heliocentrism anyway, which means you deny the heliocentric model. And that's okay. That's your own prerogative. If you want to make your own version of the heliocentric model up, if you want to just ignore that no one can come up with anything better for the heliocentric model than this, which thus concedes that the Earth could be at rest, that's on you. But simply put, and then this is the conclusion, Einstein did in fact, and I'm sorry for the technicalities of the stream, I know I may have gotten a little dry, but Einstein basically started with special relativity to explain away Michelson-Morley, to explain how the Earth could in fact be revolving around the sun, even though it always appears as if it's at rest, to quote Einstein directly, that everything occurs on the Earth as if the Earth is always in a state of rest. But here's my theory to explain why it always appears as if it's at rest, but it's not. People try to say he's not talking about rotation when he says at rest. He means at rest spinning, tilted wobbling, spinning, but not revolving. No, he means at rest. And he explains this in depth. And you guys wait for the next stream because I didn't have a ton of time to put the presentation together, so I had to just give you guys some of the screenshots. Dude, Einstein's getting so body bagged next week, in the coming weeks, it's going to be pretty bad. And the whole point of this show is to show you guys that despite like modern misconception, all evidence shows us that we're at the center. All of it, right? All of it. Even if you believe fairy tales about stuff that they claim to be doing when they go out into space, which I would strongly suggest against, even if you do, it all shows that the Earth is geocentric. All of it has to. If relativity is still a thing, all of it is showing that the Earth is in the center. And in fact, tons of evidence has gone directly against the idea that we're not at the center over and over and over and over and over. So why is it not only a debate, Like, why are people not debating it? Why is this not an ongoing idea? And people debate it, but it's shadow banned and censored and not allowed in publications, not allowed in university papers. You get mocked and ridiculed by people that exhibit immense intellectual ineptitude, right? They mock you and scoff, and like, why? Why do they lie and tell you that Foucault's pendulum proves the Earth's rotating, but then an actual grasp of relativity necessitates that you concede it doesn't prove the Earth is rotating? Why do they say the ring laser gyro proves the Earth is rotating when, again, according to relativity, it cannot be considered proof of the Earth rotating, or you're going against the fundamentals of relativity, which is the current theory of gravity for the model? Why are they lying about that? People always want to ask, why would they lie? Why would they lie about the pendulum and the gyro if that doesn't actually exclusively demonstrate the Earth's rotating according to their own theories of physics that hold their model together? Which means they have to agree. They can lie, gaslight you, pretend that it makes you stupid because they're projecting that they don't understand their own theories. They haven't fully read the papers. They don't understand the actual implications of it. But that doesn't change anything. And everyone can go fact check everything I've said. Go look at the PDFs. So every time you see one of these people claiming, watch the comment section. Watch the comment section. Someone's going to be like, Witsit is such an idiot. Witsit is such an idiot. He's totally wrong about everything that he said. But these are all top-level physicists breaking down all the math publicly available. It's in my Telegram. Show me where the math is wrong, because show me where relativity doesn't specifically say it, and then we can talk. All this is built upon the theory of relativity. Witsit is such an idiot. He's so wrong. The pendulum could only work. This is what they're going to say, that they'd have to go faster than the speed of light. I just showed you a little teaser of next week, right, which is that according to Einstein and general relativity, there is no actual speed of light like he first proposed in special relativity, which is why in modern physics, when they see like, oh, there seems to be a constant speed of light, oh, special relativity. Oh, there doesn't seem to be a constant speed of light, oh, general relativity. They go back and forth. They wouldn't be applying general relativity to where there is no constant speed of light in certain observations if it did have a finite constant speed of light limit. So they literally know that special and general relativity are not the same. And Einstein ended up having to contradict himself. And then he says in his own words, and I finally found where he says it in his own words, that you cannot claim that according to the laws of general relativity, you cannot claim that there is definitively a finite speed of light. Now, if we take all the other principles of his physics, right, when you actually look at the accelerative inertial frames, the angular momentums, the actual equivalence principle, the covariance principle, all necessities of relativity, when you look at that, you find out, oh, if the Earth's at rest, which Einstein says you have to acknowledge the Earth could just be at rest, then that means, according to his own claims of physics, then yes, it would go faster than the speed of light. And no, that wouldn't go against his theory, because in general relativity, he acknowledges that it can be that way. And they don't know any of this, dude. When I say they, I'm the people that'll mock you or ridicule you. So it's like, it's important to think about this, right? It's crazy, bro. It's the Wizard of Oz with a curtain. Okay, so you should ask yourself, why such a misrepresentation? Why do they act like this is scientific? Why are they not telling you we're making philosophical decisions, or it's still in the air and we haven't definitively proven it? Turns out that the things we claim are because of the rotation of the Earth could easily be because of the rotation of the universe around the Earth. There will be angular momentum translated down to the Earth, which, by the way, above the flat plane Earth, you would of course have rotational angular momentum via the rotation over top of you, and then you would have that in relation to your position down below you, and just wait for the home run beyond that. You guys aren't ready. But a lot of people think that doesn't work for the plane Earth because of the alleged like Coriolis effects flipping in the south, right? But they would be wrong, and I will show you guys that in the future. Okay. So cool. I know that was a lot. I know this is a lot. Basically, I know I've said it a million times, but you can look into the Machian principle. Look into what Einstein himself said. Look into what all the people we covered today in the presentation, all the physicists, all the PDFs. It's very simple. They have all the quantitative and mathematical breaking down of it. When people tried to make fun of me for bringing this up back in the day, like Bryant Myers, who's disappeared, and all these other crazy people, right? Trying to like flex on me because they have credentials, but they can't actually even understand what they believe and stuff like that. And anyway, you were probably there. Maybe some of you may not have been, but I corrected that dude the whole way with Lorentz contraction and everything, right? This is the same thing. They were making fun of me how it would be so tiny you would never see it. Not according to his theory, not according to the actual math. And when you look at the math, you have to invoke Newtonian mechanics to even get the predicted value that you claim that the Earth causes based on the pendulum, based on relational mechanics. And of course, if you do that, you have to acknowledge that the Earth could be stationary. This is a big deal. This means, in conclusion, objectively, if you believe in the mainstream model that everyone says is true, then what you have to believe is that you cannot say the Foucault's pendulum is proof the Earth rotates, and you cannot say that ring laser gyros are proof that the Earth rotates, because the set of inertial forces, specifically Coriolis, centrifugal, and there's a few other ones, right? These forces are actually going to cause the same effects. And in fact, there will be a net inward force based on an accelerative Coriolis effect that is actual. So according to the current model, it's fictitious. Well, if everything was moving around the Earth, it would be actual. And then the accelerative Coriolis effect would actually counter the centrifugal force going out, right? Because it's twice as strong. And that you would actually get a net inward centripetal force towards the Earth that would come in radially towards the Earth. If you deny it, you don't understand it, it's okay, but I encourage you to just read it, look into it, do some research. Don't make yourself ignorant. Make yourself appear ignorant. Turns out that if you believe in relativity, you believe in gravity, you believe the Earth's a spinning, tilted, wobbling, revolving ball, all this stuff, right? You have to believe that everything we see it's exactly the same as if the Earth was at rest. If you don't believe that, you have to believe that everything is exactly what we would see if the Earth were at rest. And then that means, of course, the Earth could be at rest. Why this is such a hidden secret, I don't know, but I just gave you top tier physics professors, all the math, all the breakdown, all the specifics, the covariance principle, the equivalence principle within relativistic application. I gave you all of it. All of it. It's all in my Telegram, the PDFs. It's all on this stream, right? It's just a fact. It's just a fact. And so if everything is equivalent, including the pendulum and the gyro, what exactly do you have to claim the Earth is rotating? Because if you have a radially inward effect, now look what you get into, and this is what I'm going to say in conclusion. This is all just legit objective. I'm sorry, right? As in, it's objectively what the theory dictates, says, the physical claims that it makes. If you want to believe in it, that's fine. You can say, yeah, sure, I can't invoke the pendulum. I can't invoke the gyro. Exactly the same thing would happen if the Earth was stationary and the entire cosmos was moving around it, according to my own theory, but I still just want to believe it's moving. Okay, but don't claim you have some proof of it, because you always have this radially inward effect, which means really anytime that you think you have something, relativity is dictating that you understand that it could be the Earth at rest, which is why Einstein said, everything always occurs on the Earth as if it is rest. And here's the conclusion. Here's the little home run. I'll just go ahead and dunk on the heliocentric model one last time. Okay? If you have to acknowledge this, which you do, right? Which is that this is not exclusive evidence for the rotation, just like the guy says specifically right here. The flattened figure of the Earth or Earth's Foucault pendulum can no longer be utilized as proofs of the Earth's real rotation. Shows all of the math. There's no way to refute or rebut any of it. All of the math is bulletproof with relational mechanics. Everything that Newtonian and Einsteinian physics predict, all of their variables thoroughly explained, show that you cannot claim, and in fact, it would be like a Lorentz magnetic force if the Earth is at rest. All of these distant galaxies moving, completing basically spinning, completing a spin once a year. What a coincidence. The galaxies look like they complete a rotation once a year, complete a spin every year like the rest of the sky does. Everything in the sky is doing a cycle relative to the Earth, but actually it's all totally not relative to the Earth. The Earth's not at the center. You're crazy, okay? Anyway, so just like you said, that the Foucault's pendulum can no longer be utilized as proofs of the Earth's real rotation. If that's the case, now you have a serious problem. When I say if, I mean it is objectively the case. The real serious problem you have now is that when you took Michelson, Gale, Pearson, it detected this. within 98% accuracy. In fact, the Sagnac effect is the same effect still utilized for ring laser gyros that people have been running around claiming prove the Earth rotate. You definitely can't disavow them now. They detect the sidereal rotation of 15 degrees per hour within 98% accuracies. Because it's not actually 15 degrees, it fluctuates slightly, but very close, roughly 15 degrees. And so it's within 98% accuracy of 15 degrees, right? Which is not the exact number, which is why it's not exact, okay? So it's very close to matching exactly the rotation of the sky, right? Every time. Every single time, within 98% accuracy of 15 degrees per hour, every single time, okay? Michelson-Gale-Pearson, using the same interferometry and the same principles as Michelson-Morley that didn't detect the orbit of the Earth around the sun. Now, you have to explain, once you now understand that your own model necessitates you concede that, in fact, if the Earth was stationary and everything was revolving around it and rotating around it, you would have angular momentum transferred to the Earth, thus have the same effects observed in the ring laser gyro. And if you deny that, you deny your own model and your own relativity. Once you can actually accept that, which means you can be intellectually honest and actually comprehend it, then you have to take that result, Michelson-Gale-Pearson, 15 degrees per hour, and combine that with Michelson-Morley and explain why did Michelson-Morley, using the same interferometry method and using the same principles, not detect the orbit of the Earth, but did detect the sidereal rotation within 98% accuracy. And the only actual answer that is sufficiently going to explain the two combined, not to mention Airy's failure, is that the Earth is at rest and the rotation is actually the sky itself. The cosmos move around the Earth at the center, which is why there is a real rotation to be detected when it comes to sidereal rotation. But there is not a real movement to be detected when it comes to the Earth rotating around the sun. And yes, that's rotation. If you want to use the word translational, it doesn't change anything. According to Einstein's own words, in Relativity, Special and General Theory, right under the Michelson-Morley portion, he explains that it's a type of rotation which changes direction. So you have to explain both Michelson-Morley and Michelson-Gale-Pearson. The only viable explanation is that the Earth is at rest. That is the end of the heliocentric model. Basically, I had to painfully walk you through all of it so that you now understand it's over. It's over. You cannot combine the two. You can't. And you can't claim exclusivity of sidereal rotation as necessitated by your own physics, which was necessitated by other experimentation, which means you have to believe that all reference frames are relative and that time and space can bend and warp and that length can contract and that time can physically expand and slow down, therefore creating this stubbornly persistent illusion that the Earth is actually geocentric and stationary and that everything always appears on the Earth as if it is always in a state of rest. You have to believe all that, okay? Now you combine Michelson-Gale-Pearson, Michelson-Morley, and Airy's failure. There's no way around it. So all the stuff about how it wouldn't be enough to drag the pendulum, wrong. There's all the math. The ballers love their math until it refutes them. All of a sudden, they won't look at math. So the heliocentric model is over. It's over. I'm sorry. And like, honestly, don't make it weird, bro. Like, don't make it weird. If you want to cling on to the fact that it's a globe, like, okay, you think the Earth is a stationary globe just sitting there, like, whatever, you know, like, that's on you for sure. But like, don't make it weird. Don't like, if you want to go believe in it, whatever, like, go believe in it. Like, don't come here like talking about how other people are stupid. Like, you just don't understand it. You're uninformed. So anyway, I hope that like you can just let it go. Like, here's the deal. It does have some philosophical implications in closing, and it means that there's a creator probably, right? Now, whether or not you want to believe that creator is benevolent, malevolent, meaning good intended, ill intended, whether they care about you, whether they're personable, whether it's a he, whether it's a she, whether it's an it, whether it's an infinite energy, that's your own personal journey. I will tell you that Yah is real. He's like a father figure. Life comes from the masculine, feminine nurture that, just like a seed in all existence. And the Father is personable and does love you and will answer your prayers. But look, that's what I think, okay? But my point is that regardless of what you think of the creator, that's your own personal journey, right? That's your own life, your own personal journey. But it does mean that some type of designing force had to put the Earth here. So I'm not going to lie to you about how it is clearly a big deal. If the Earth is stationary, it's clearly a big deal, right? Like, okay, so you just saying, what's it matter? Who cares? Let's put it off. I already think there's probably a God, or who cares? It wouldn't mean there's a God, which is insane. That's just a cop out to avoid looking at it because you don't want to, you're afraid of not fitting in. You're afraid of believing something about something as fundamental as the earth differently than everyone else does. You need to get a grip. Okay? You need to get a grip. They will end up changing the model to a geocentric electric universe at some point with the fluid-like medium. Like, it's inevitable they'll end up saying the earth is at the center because they can't get away from it. Okay, but they'll put it off as long as possible. They'll make up all kinds of black holes, dark flow, dark energy, quantum foam, yippity unicorn flow, gravitational refractive, reference frame, index, gradient times 7x on gravitational steroids based on the dilation of time, which can now be combined with the concept of freedom. And if you combine freedom, time, and love, and space, then you actually get all kinds of effects that are completely malleable within infinite universes. Like, look, I don't care what some atheist that's terrified and petrified of the idea of a creator has to say about how they can make up endless amount of fill in the gap pseudoscientific nonsense to avoid this fact. But I'm just showing you what the evidence says. And all the evidence is chiseled away at heliocentric proponents, heliocentric models for many, many years. And now the time is up. The time is up. It just is what it is. I'm sorry about it. It's over. It'll be okay. You can physically demonstrate that if you add something like, say, in a hollow sphere spinning around something stationary, it'll actually experience those forces proportional to the actual angular momentum. We have these huge galaxies, quote unquote, distant galaxies, which everything in the sky is vortexing, by the way. Everything is a vortex. From the small to the big, it's a vortex. It's actually within the conjugate geometric expression of magnetism. We'll cover that some other time. Everything's a vortex. That's why the galaxies look like they're spinning. What a coincidence, they complete a spin once a year. Okay, these distant galaxies are directly in relation to us, which is 1925 Edwin Hubble, when they had to say, oh, looks like the Earth is in the universe, in the center of the universe. Long story short, everything is a beautiful, majestic timepiece built for you, moving in relation to the Earth, all paying homage to the Earth effectively. And it is actually a beautiful thing. You're being really ungrateful by ignoring it and denying it, and you're being egregious by going around and ridiculing those that are willing to speak up and try to help share this information with other people, and just be appreciative of what it is that we live on and where we live, and how the whole world is basically set up for us. It's a beautiful thing. So long story short, all of these weirdo philosophical biases due to atheism, masquerading as science, like Edwin Hubble says, we must avoid the horror of a special and unique position at all costs, even though the idea of a central Earth can never be disproven, and all evidence basically says that we must avoid it at all costs because it's horrific. And we'll get into more of it later. But anyway, I'm just kind of rambling now. But let me check the super chats. To reiterate, stationary Earth, everything moving around it, according to relativity and Newtonian mechanics, you have to acknowledge, because even according to Newtonian mechanics, because he said it was a fixed background of space, but if the whole entire cosmos is moving, even Newtonian mechanics necessitates that you acknowledge that it would in fact cause the same equivalent effects that are equally valid in explanation for a stationary Earth at rest in the center of everything, even according to Newton himself. I showed you the quote, according to his physics and his implications and his laws. I showed you all of that. I showed you even according to relativity. Okay? Which means there's no out. You have to acknowledge that the pendulum and the gyro and anything claimed to detect ideal rotation is in zero ways exclusive evidence that the Earth itself is moving. Or you can be a heliocentric heretic. Okay. All right, thank you, Live Free Ordy, for the $20 tip. Generous tip for the efforts, brother. Thank you so much. Much love. Adrian, thank you for the $5 tip on Rockfin. Thank you. Symphony Vinci, thank you for the $5 tip, and thank you back. She said, thank you. So much love. Thank you so much. Let me try to find the super chats. I always forget where they're at. Oh, how dare you. Here we go. All right. Thanks for the time you spent on FE, Austin. By the way, time is a concept. Yeah, time is conceptual quantification of change and passing. Like we think that we get older because like, well, we think that time's real because we get older, right? It's just change. As we experience change, we say, oh, that must be time. But that's all that time is just conceptual quantification of motion and time, or motion and change. Time is conceptual quantification of motion and change. The motion of the sky, which isn't linear, ironically, is perpetual and circular, and then change, like our cells degrade over time. Like it's a seed, then it's a plant. It's a primitive attempt to express the inexpressible, effectively, the inexplicable. You can't explain the concept of time. It's merely conceptual. So yes, I agree. Time just a concept. Tom, thank you for the 12. I guess that's British pounds. Earth First Space Letter. Heliocentrism is an atheistic religion. Indeed. Thank you for the $2 super chat. First, last. That's a wrap. Precisely articulated. Austin crushed Helio sorcery. Thank you so much. First, last, and thank you for the kind words and for the support. I will say, like, it's gonna be quite a bit to do the whole like. To do like the full presentation for each from every Monday and Wednesday, and then have a guest, and then try to do the Sunday show. Like the presentations, like looking through all those PDFs and finding everything can be pretty time consuming, but I'm trying. Support what you like or it goes away. All right. So thank you guys for kicking it. Oh, $20, Nickel Boy. Thank you so much for the OP sticker, Nickel Boy. Thank you for the $20. Much love, greatly appreciated. All right, cool. Were they popping up? The alert box should pop up, right? auditnasa.com. Fill out the applications. We're going through more of them this week. I may be reaching out to you. We have another HR manager going to be reaching out to you. I think we're going to add a second HR manager. We're putting together our IT team, putting together some stuff that not everyone needs to know about. Releasing business card challenge, meaning everyone can input a Vistaprint business card design. We'll be selecting 5 of them, so we have a variety of different type of business cards people can hand out. So if you think you're cool graphic designing business cards, I'll create a form so you can submit it. I have to figure out the best way to create a form so you can submit the business cards. Same thing for like little brochures or pamphlets or flyers, but I don't like the whole like open up a page to read. I want it to just be a card back and front of some information. High quality, glossy. We're going to pay extra for the glossy business cards. Obviously, if you want them, I can in no way. I'm already spending tons of money out of pocket. Like that has to be reimbursed at this point. There's no way. Plus tons of time doing Audit NASA just like because I believe it's important. But either way, of course, also, if say I paid for all the cards, think about how many like anti-flat earthers would just like, I want tons of them so that they can try to, anyway, obviously you have to pay for the cards. And I'm thinking about even like, like bumping them up just like a couple bucks so that it covers expenses. But anyway, so that we got that going on, and the flyer, so that'll be cool. So you can put them in gas pumps and little like tourist attractions. And it's not about plain Earth or anything. It's not about true Earth as much as just like NASA. And like, did you realize NASA was getting this much money and that they've lost this much footage? Or did you realize that NASA refuses to comply with this and this and this? Or would you like NASA to be more forthcoming about this? Or would you like more transparent answers about why they haven't been able to go back and do this or whatever, right? And leave those to people just to pique curiosity and intrigue people. And so that's what's going on. We're also finalizing a lot of different things. I have so much stuff going on that it's like, it's actually insane. So there will be no stream tomorrow. Tuesday is the day I take off. So I'll be taking Saturday and Tuesdays off, as you guys know. Sunday morning, Witsit's Biscuits and Gravy. Sunday afternoon, Globe Busters. Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, Relatively Speaking. Wednesday, Schooling the Globers, 9 p.m. Eastern. Thursday, Witsit Kicks It with whatever guest. Friday in the field, where we talk to people in their respected field and interview them. This week should be the PhD astronomer. Saturday, day off. Okay, Tuesday I tried to vote to audit NASA. I'm trying to work throughout that. I'm trying to get a lot of the different positions filled, get the different comms set up where we can get the organization running. I know it'll probably be a solid month of just getting everything working properly, functioning properly, moving at a good rate. I'm putting all the time I can, basically. I'm just trying to be able to squeeze in time to like chill with my fam. I mean, I do chill with my fam. Obviously, I run in and see Aaliyah all the time and hang out with her certain hours in the day, but I'm just working a lot for free. And so I'm busy. I'm trying to get it all done. So anyone that wants to help with auditnasa.com, that would help a lot. I guess the summit is also going to end up coming up. There's going to be another thing. So I really need to get this organized where people are all kind of helping each other out. But it's going to be dope. Let's just say that. A lot of really cool stuff about to happen with Audit NASA. AuditNASA.com, pop-ups with the application. You can also go down to the bottom where it says that we're accepting applicants. You can message me there. Cool. And then you can get access to the private Telegram group. That's the best way. And we'll soon have an exclusive email for Audit NASA, but we have to figure out how to keep the trolls out because they already spam the website because they hate life. All right. I think that's it. If you want to support the channel, links in the description. I set up a PayPal for Audit NASA, and they're being super extra about it, so don't send money to that PayPal. I'm going to have to like send the money back that's in there, which is very unfortunate, but 'tis the world we live in. Because that would help me cover the stuff I've already paid for. But you know what? When you do what's right, everything ends up working out. It'll be okay. Y'all take care of it. All right. Lots of work setting up new companies. Lots. Y'all will crush it. Yeah, it's all good. Somebody's got to do it. Great breakdown, Austin. Thank you. Sorry if it was a bit information heavy and kind of like too much. A Foucault pendulum isn't exactly rocket science, but it's not exactly trivial either. The Foucault pendulum doesn't prove the Earth is rotating according to your own model. That's just a fact. End of conversation. Brenda Spanning website. Tons of them are, dude. They just hate life. All right. Thank you guys for kicking it. Links to support in the description. $ with to get to Cash App. You guys get it. PayPal.me/InAWorld. You can sign up to be a member. You can become a patron. We'll work out something where members and patrons. I'm gonna work something out. You just obviously see how busy my schedule is. So whether that just be like a private group where we can all talk, and occasionally I'll jump in there and jump on video with you guys or something. We'll figure something out. I do appreciate all the patrons. That does help with a bit of a sigh relief with some type of consistency. What subscription is best so I don't give YouTube any of the Skrilla? I guess right now Patreon is just 15% plus taxes after that, which is like 10 to 15%. So it sucks. I mean, I guess there is a place that Rumble does that may take less. I'll have to look into it. I'm about to start doing Rumble. Yeah, I don't really know, man. Someone told me something about like Subscribe Star or something like that. I haven't set it up. So just the world we live in. I mean, Cash App doesn't take anything. If you're talking about like a monthly thing, I don't know, bro. All right. Earthquakes prove no motion. What's so funny is like, if depending on how deep I wanted to get into it, like honestly, earthquakes, volcanoes, all these additional motions, would actually mess up would affect the claim rotation. Cash App is the best, yeah, for sure. As opposed to everything around the Earth, would basically create this pressure that holds it there and solidifies its stationary at rest state. But I didn't want to get too much. Subscribe Star, yeah, I might try that. Yeah. All right, cool. Seek and speak truth unequivocally. The weak find contentment in the consensus of ignorance. So who cares what other people think? Just like this stream will show abundantly, people will get in the chat and claim that I'm stupid. I have all the PDFs and proofs right there from their own paradigm, their own hostile witnesses. That's just kind of the way that it goes. Weak people will attack you. The weak find contentment in the consensus of ignorance. and they kind of like party, get together to do that. So it's no big deal. Just kind of know that. Use them as like a teaching experience for other people that are normal and honest and seeing it. And it definitely is a challenge, even for me at times, but just try to remain patient and loving. And I would say, yeah, that's all you can do. It's inevitably going to always happen. Strong people don't care what weak people think. Informed people don't care what ignorant people think. And this stream's a perfect example of that. I think that's about it. If you want to stay updated, you can just go to t.me/WitsitStreams or t.me/Miswits, and that's the chat that everyone's talking in. Miswits on Telegram. I kind of try to stay in there a bit. Cool. I think that's about it. So whenever they revile you for his name's sake or for the truth's sake, rejoice for they did to all the prophets before you. What's popular is not true. What's true is rarely popular. So just speak the truth regardless of what other people think. Until Wednesday night, I'll catch up with you guys later. Much love. Peace. Just kidding. I absolutely refuse to do that outro. Oh my gosh, Austin, how dare you? I got you, man. You thought we were gone. I'm actually adding. See if I can find it really quick. I just like that thing like triggers me. It's so lame. Okay, here it is. Okay. All right, let's see if it works. All right, love you guys. Sorry, I wanted to change that. Great evening to the lovers of truth. Much love. Maybe I was supposed to read you guys anyway. Excommunicating flats from True Earth. All right, man. Yeah, cool, dude. Austin, we should talk. I want your honest opinions on things. I think. Okay, well, I'll try my best. You have to reach out to me on Telegram. There are lots of people that ask me for my opinion on things and want to talk on the phone for 30 minutes from now. I literally physically can't do it, but yeah, you can message me on Telegram. I'll try. You may have trolls and haters on here, but there's far more people supporting you. Thank you, man. It's all good. Good night, Austin. Much love. Bonus record. Is this the end cutscene? Yeah, this is the bloopers. All right. Much love. Hopefully this works. I don't actually know that it will work. I just didn't want to play with that thing. It gets on my nerves. All right. Till Wednesday night, go to auditnasa.com, fill in the form. It's going to be dope. You guys just got to do it. There's only like 50 people that have done it, and there's way more people that originally sent in resumes and applications. It's not a big deal, dude. Just read what it says. You can tell it's not a big deal. It just, if you're being honest, then there's nothing to worry about, and that's why it's there. It's to get rid of people. You guys have got to fill that in. So fire streams. Thanks, Austin. Thanks so much. Great stream, man. Thank you. All right. Much love. Haha to those who left. Yeah, I know. Pretty funny. That's what it is. We were testing you guys. You guys don't even stay for the actual outro. How dare you? Crushing. Thank you, man. Much love. I like that rap. Thank you, man. People say I should redo it. And then post it on stuff. All right. Maybe this will work. I actually don't know. But anyway, till Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, Skull and the Globers, episode 10. I'll see you guys later. Much love. That's for Israel. Wonder, is it real?
proportionate. The truth distorted quick with a forceful grip. They force a misinfo that we absorbing quick. Took the people's signature to mean extorted it. They forging it if news anchors informant to informing them. There's a surplus, but they tell us there are shortages. Credit economy mortgages, dollar that's supported with empty fortresses. But what's important is this: we porting ships, important gifts. Of course it is what extortion is, in accordance with an assortment list of foreign tricks we ignoring, which informing this, informant this. It looked like we were snoring tricked. Pedophilia and the government endorsing it. Yeah, eugenics is exactly what abortion is. You just vilify those insubordinate. Way to matrix engineer, that's unfortunate. Geopolitically we in a field that's for Israel. Wonder is it real? Rappers actors say they high, say they sip with pills. Glorify suicide so they get the deals. Big pharma set it up just to flip the pills. Control the music industry until the scripts get filled. Geopolitically, yeah, we in a field that's for Israel. Wonder is it real?